Te mauri ora. Ko whetu matarau te maunga, ko awa tere te awa. Ko te whānau a hene rupe me ona karangatanga maha e mihi nei e whakatau nei. Ka ko ngā kōpara rongo mai tāpui. Oi te rā, kai te kawakawa mai tawhiti ko te whānau tū whakairiora. E mihi nei e whakatau nei. Kia tātou, katoa o Ngati Porou, o te rā, tēnei anō te mihi, hikorangi maunga, o e puawa, Ngati Porou koutou, te iwi, nau mai hara mai. Ki roto hoki i tēnei whare whakairo a tāhua, hine rupe, me ona te mahine, te aotahi, te atahaia. Arā hoki, ko te whare toko i te ora, ko te kōkarongo mai tāpui. E whakatau nei a tātou i tēnei wā. Hoi te rā, mauria mai e ngā tini aitua, e ngā mate huhua, kai rongo hoki o koutou. Kia mātou, kia tangi hea, kia poropoaki tia rātou kia rātou. Oki oki ai, hoi te rā ko tātou anō nei. Te mihi ki o koutou, tēnā koutou, kia rano tātou. O te rā, ako pakeke, ako mātua, ako whanaunga, ko hara mai i te tawhiti, ko hara mai i te mamao, ko hara mai i te tata. Tēnei no te mihi ki o koutou, kia tātou i tēnei wā nā reira. Ko te puari whakahaere, o te Runanganui, koutou rā, kei te noho ki te tepu. Tātou i tēnei wā, tēnā koutou. O te rā, ho runga hoki i te matu te tamu me te wairua tapu. He honore e kōrea ki te atua, he maunga rongo ki runga ki te matua te whenua, he whakaaro pai. Kia tātou katoa, amine. Kia rano tātou. Kona noi ho te taku wāanga. Mo tēnei wā. Nā rere kei te mihi ki o koutou, anake, te whānau hine rupe, te whānau tū whakairoara, ngā piringa hapu hoki o tēnei torohe tai. Kia koutou katoa, kia tātou i tēnei wā. Nā rere, tēnā koutou, kia rā tātou. Kanui tēnā. All rise. O te whānau wā, tū whakairi ora, me te whānau wā i rupe. Tū whakahihi mai, te whakaruru hau, o te o ngā uri e hua mahoe ake nei. He mai ngā rongo nei. He mai ngā rongo nei. He mai. He mai ngā whaupau. He mai ngā whakahira hira. E irua toru whā. Kia rā no tātou. Kei au koutou nei.
Hoi anō rā, kia ora tātou. Tēnā koe ki emara. I tō tātou karakia o tira te whakatau i o tuākana taina karangatanga maha. Ko tau nei ki roto i tō tātou tipuna whare ia hine rupe i te rāne. Ngā tīpuna, e ngā tuākana, e ngā taina, a tātou tamariki mohopuna, ngā karangatanga maha, Ngati Porou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou, kia ora tātou katoa. Tēnā tātou, i o tātou mate, rokohanga te mate whakarihariha, te parikura i roto o te kawakawa mai tawhiti, kei runga i te i o te wā. Hoi anō, tangihi o tātou mate, ngā mate o roto i te rohe, ngā mate horapa ki Aotearoa. Tae atu huki ki etahi o ngā Ngāti mate i rā wāhi. Hoi anō, he hui ngā tāngata, he hoki ngā whakaaro kia rātau mā. Te pūkahu o tātou mate kore a rika. Hoi anō, rātau te hunga mate kia rātau, tātou te hunga ora e tau nei, tēnā tātou, kia ora tātou katoa. Kia ora tātou i roto i ngā whakamātautau o te wā. Heri te mea kia Ngati Porou ana, ke engari ki te ao, ki Aotearoa hoki. Te mate weri nei, kua tau ki roto i tō tātou whenua, aho rite ki te pakanga. Engari te rerekētanga o tēnei pakanga, i ngā pakanga o tātou mātua tīpuna, tae atu hoki ki te hunga i haere i rā wāhi, i tae ei rātou te kite i te hoariri. Tēnei o ngā hoariri, ka re tātou i te kite, ka tau mai ki runga i a tātou. Hoi anō, e mihi ana ki a tātou, i roto i o tātou kāinga horapa ki Aotearoa, tae atu hoki ki a tātou e noho nei ki te rohe o Ngati Porou. E manawa nui, e pūmau ki te pare atu i te mate weri i tō tātou rohe, i o tātou kāinga, i o tātou karangatanga maha. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou, kia ora tātou katoa. Me pēnei te kōrero, aha ko pēhea, ko tātou tēnei, i runga i te āhuatanga o tō tātou Runanganui, e hoki mai nei ia tau ki te kōrero ki te iwi i ngā āhuatanga i hua mai i te tau kua tahakene. Mō he tonu au, a he nui ngā āhuatanga i heipū ki a tātou i roto i tau kua tahakene. Nō reira tēnei te āhuatanga o tā tātou hui, te ripuata ki a koutou, i roto i tēnei huihuinga, tae atu hoki te hunga e pai nei o rātou taringa ki tō tātou reo irirangi o Ngati Porou, tae atu hoki ki te hunga kei runga i ngā ia rere o te wā, ngā taonga hau e tae ei tātou te kōrero ki o tātou uri aha ko kihia. Ki taku mōheo e tahi tāngata kei te hono mai i ahi treiria e tahi atu whenua o te ao. Nō reira, kāre nui ake ngā kōrero i tēnei wā, te mihi kia koutou kia tātou, o tira te iwi kāinga o te marae o hine rupe, o tira kawakawa mai tawhiti, nō reira kemara, koutou me o mātua, me o tīpuna, o tāua mātua, o tāua tīpuna, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou, kia ora tātou katoa. Te wiwi tāti, no kora nani, he iwi moke, no wai apu, no hana o ke nā, no hikurani, he nani, te iwi, he wanoke, e hae ana, ki te pakama, ka whenga mai nei, ki te marae, kia tani, hei konei ae, te iwi, hei konei ae. Nō reira e aku rangatira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou, kia ora tātou katoa. E toru ngā puka o tēnei huihuinga. Kei konei katoa ngā kōrero mō tēnei o ngā huihuinga, e tai o koutou tēnā pēr ko taia te pānui i roto i ngā kōrero nei, reke atu i te ruatakau mātahi rā, e nei i runga i I tipurangi o te runanganui o Ngati Porou. Ko pao hoki runga I te reo irirangi. Engari, hei roto I ngā whakahaere o tēnei ata. Ko a tātou kōrero ka pani ngia runga te tapu hou nei. Ki kona tātou whaihaere I tā tātou hui I te rāni. Kei te mālama ki a tātou katoa? Ka pai tēnei. So I'll ask for some apologies if there are any apologies people want to raise.
Christina Coleman.
Kia ora.
Mona Haikama. Kate Pairangi.
Wally Miller? Wally Welcome?
Eni Tibble, Angela Tibble. Rapaya Parata Brown.
I'll apologize for myself. I'm on Facebook. Oh, my. It's loud.
So who are you putting up? Yourself? No. Are there any other apologies?
Yeah. Bridget Tennessee and William Henry.
Yeah, Tata Ngati Porou Hui, Dow, Liz Nine.
Michael Moosberger? Walton Valentine Goldsmith?
Koi mata e Lady Ngati Moods. And Marty Tarvati.
Roy Mata and Luke Larson.
Tina Koitiana. Tina Ngata.
Kristen Kohere. We have also apologies from Matere Konya, Alice Pito, Ann Evans, Ngahuia, Susan, Kewinga Tane, Lassie Mirai, Jackie Minikotukutuku Royal, Sydney William Johnson, Tauarai Wawatai, Piriha Riddell, Amanda Walker, Charlie Bridgman, Arihia Tania Bristow, Dr. Henare Broughton, Connie Ferris, Hariata Pohatu, Te Miringa Huriwai, Pat Tautuhi Billing, McKay Kimoni, Mani Tafore Clark, Cheryl Tekani McQueen, Kelly Blackman, Dero Kupenga, Derek Fox, Brett Johnson, Daniel Williams, Hilton Collier, Patrick Tangaire, Maui Tamoho, Tina Porou, Agnes Walker, Tina Praitiana, Tina Ngata, Te Rere Nui ki Tawhiti Banks, Robert and Bernadette Maraki, Robin Hodkinson, Elizabeth Ann Tully, Sarah Rofiana, June Carson, Rebecca Luhana Harper, Anne Marie Collier, Ngareta Aroha Ross, Bruce Rogers, Mari Normally, Rangi Tangohau, Robin Akuhata, Florence Kiora Munro, Jacqueline Hurst, on behalf of the Ruby Hurst family, Kaina Pohatu, Robert Ngapo, Anne Tokui Taylor, Toki Tekani, Dennis Tangiwai Doctor, Pauline, Adrian, Angel, Nehed Tibble, Albert Gibson, Rena Pohere, Te Rangi Marie, Rajoki, and those are the apologies. Is anybody prepared to move the apologies? Amo. And Tina. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary. Just so you know, all these people, they received their notice of the meeting through the register. That's why we've got so many people, and I'm really wrapped that they've sent their apologies, and those that haven't sent their apologies are obviously here. So, or on the Ipurai. Peter Musenberg. Musenberg. All those in favour, please say aye. Motion carried. We'll move on to the minutes of the last AGM, and they are in this booklet here. I don't plan to read them all out. Because I think we'll be here till 5 o'clock tonight if I read all the minutes out. Well, I'll precede it as much as I can. The agenda, there's a Brown Fort Territory GZL234. The lights are on. So I would like you to turn your lights off. You might have to sleep here tonight. Basically, the last annual general meeting was held at Porou Hui on the 23rd of November 2019. The agenda is basically the same as the agenda for this meeting. We had our tarakia mihi and apologies. The minutes for the 2018 were approved. We had discussions on mana motuhake, rakumara forest and conservation, ngaro he moana o ngā hapu, te reo o Ngati Porou, rongo mai outdoor resources, educational and vocational pathways, Mirai development. In the whairawa section, financial responsibility, investments. In the whaioranga section, we had whaioranga services, the Horota Collective in relation to whānau ora, and Manaki Tairāwhiti in relation to the relationship between Ngati Porou whānau and hapu, Ngati Porou individuals, and government departments in the Tairāwhiti. The next item that was discussed was the management overview, the year-end results, and then we had a discussion on Toitu Ngati Porou, looking ahead in educational grants and scholarships, Ngati Porou Histories Project. There were the matters arising out of that was trade training support and grant distribution. Then we had the reports from the holding company, the Ngati Porou Hauora, management overview, the financials, a strategic plan update, the appointment of the external auditor, and elected representatives, remembering that we had an election at the end of 2019, and we welcomed Dean Moana, Maraika Womanhoven, and Trudy Lewis onto the board to join the other trustees and directors who were re-elected to the board. And general business was a discussion on communications, the Tūranga Port development, gang culture, investment in commercial mining, succession planning, and our meeting closed at 3:30 with the karakia. So that was those were the minutes of the AGM at Porou Hui. Is anybody that was there happy to move that those were the minutes of that meeting?
I have a question.
Yep.
On that first. There was a vote at the last meeting to increase the, whatever it is, the honorary rates for the board,
Yep.
which I don't think is in there.
Yeah, no, it's there.
Oh, it is?
Yeah,
Page 8.
yeah. Page 8. Yeah. That's what I read that under the management.
I'll move.
Okay, thank you. Thank please say aye. Are there any matters arising out of these minutes that won't be on the agenda?
Yes. Sorry, communication, please.
Okay, but
For general business?
yeah, we can raise that. Yeah, communication.
Hi, Fiona. I know that I was on the list, apologies, because it was read out and I was watching it live stream, but I'm all right.
Okay, well, we can add that
I
to.
loved, I wanted to be on.
Thank you, Joanna. Any other matters arising? Thank you very much, everybody. We'll move on to the next item of our agenda, which is the report on the operations of Ngati Porou Group for 2019-2020 income year. So that's to the 30th of June 2020. Bueno, i kama e toru ngā wāhanga i roto i te report, aku report o te wāhanga kia mātou ko ngā kaitiaki me tō tātou kai hau tū ia Herewini. Koe no, ko mutu a Herewini i tāna mahi. Pai ke i tēnei wā, ka mihi au kiai. Ka mihi au kiai mōna i whakapau wera, mōna i tia haere, i arahi haere, i ngā kaimahi o te Runanganui o Ngati Porou, mō ngā tau ēnima, ko tahake nei, mo te whakakao, mo te tuitui, i ngā kaitiaki, o tō tātou Runanganui, o tira mo te manawa nui, mo te pakari i tōna katoa mo Ngati Porou. Nō reira, i tēnei wā, e mihi ana ki aia, ki tōna hoaranga tira, ki ana tamariki, me tōna whānau, i whakapau wera, i heke ai ngā hotanga katoa, kia tūpakari ai a Ngati Porou. Nō reira, e mihi ana ki aia. Ko te kōrero kei roto i taku ripoata, mā o mahi ka kitea, e te ao, e tō iwi. Nā reira, i taku mōhio tēnā o ngā kōrero tukuiwa o tātou mātua, ka eke hanga i ki runga ia Herewini. Ka tāpiri atu tētahi atu kōrero, ko te tamaiti i ako no te kāinga e tauana. Nā reira, tēnā koutou, tēnei te mihi atu kia Herewini te koha. Rokohanga, kōna kāwai no te pārera, rongo ake nei he hui ātau tō pārera i te rānei. Pauri ake. He hui ātau tō pārera kei te kei mātahi o te tau. Tētahi taha no roto o Waiapu i te pūtake o Pūputa ki roto o Wai o Matatini. Ki e rā karangaranga o tātou o te whānau a Karuwai, Ngati Porou Hui, te whānau a Rākairoa, o tira Ngati Porou Nui tonu. Nō reira, tēnā tātou ia Herewini. Me ho mai te paki mōna. Koa kāre i konei, taku tino mihi kiaia. Te mea tuarua o roto i te rārangi kōrero, ko ngā āhuatanga i heipu kia tātou i te wā o te rāhuitanga o Ngati Porou ia tātou tonu o tira Utireni, tō tātou pirimia. Koe rā āhuatanga tatana te ono malama o te tau patahake nei. E tia haere nei tātou, e kōkiri haere nei tātou. Ki te tieki o tātou whānau, ki te tieki o tātou kuru paunamu, koena tō mātou karangatanga mo te hunga, ko tūhene atu i te whitu te kautau. he nui ngā māuiwi kei runga i a rātau. E taetu hoki ki te hunga ki ngā whānau e pēhia nei ngā taumahatanga o te wā. Me pērā taku whakatakoto kōrero mō tērā kotanga. E mihianga ki a Ngati Porou, i roto e te i ngā kokoru o tātou kaiarahi āhapu. A whānau i tū te ringa, te āwhina, te tautoko, i a tātou tonu. Ko here wini tētahi o ngā kaiarahi o te tuitui i tēnā ahotanga i Wainganui a tātou. I tāpiri atu i tēnā ahotanga i kōkiri a Ngati Porou me o tātou tuākana taina o rongo whakāto o te itanga maha ki o ngai tāmanuhi ki te kāwanatanga ki te kāwanatanga ki te kāwanatanga i me kore e āwhina mai i a mātou te tiaki i tō mātou rohe. Ko te kaupapa tuatahi a Ngati Porou, no mātou tēnei rohe mai i Pōtikirua ki te toka ātaia. Ko tā tātou mahi, he manaki, he tiaki i tō tātou rohe, i tō tātou taiao, tae to hoki ki ngā tāngata ne e noho ne ki roto. Ki raro i o tātou maru. Ko ena te āhuatanga i kōkiringia e Ngati Porou ki te kāwanatanga i te whakatautanga o te rāhui o ngā tāngata ki o tātou kāinga. I hua mai tētahi āhuatanga ko te rautipu, ko te rauora. Oroto i te rohe, e anga whakamua nei a Ngati Porou i ona āhuatanga e putai tātou i te rāhuitanga o tātou i roto i o tātou rohe. Ko tau tātou ki roto i tēnā wāhanga, koa te mate weri kei roto tonu i a tātou. He kāwanatanga hou e wānanga nei, e kōkiri nei i ngā āhuatanga o New Tireni, o Aotearoa. Koena tā tātou mahi i tēnei wā. Kia huri mai te āwhina i te tautoko i a Ngati Porou. Kei te kāinga, kei te whenua. Me taku mihi ki o tātou pakeke i roto i te wā o te rāhuitanga i a tātou. O tātou pakeke, mōheo tonu, he nui koutou kei roto ne. I tai atu ngā paepai kai, ngā paepai hauora kia koutou, te nuinga o koutou i tukuna atu ki ngā whānau i roto i tō rohe, no te mea ki mai koutou, eka kei te pai mātou. Ara te hunga e hia ana, e tarai ana te āwhina. Nā reire, mihi ana ki o tātou pakeke huri noa i te rohe. Mo tēnā āhuatanga. Te mea i tuatu i tēnei ko te mana moana. Ka tukuna ki a Dean Moana. Mana e kororo tēnei āhuatanga. Tika. Ko tōna ingoa moana waka tāpiri mai ki te mana moana nei. Ko ia te tia mana o te rōpū whakahuihui i ngā hapu o roto o Ngati Porou. Nā reira, ka tukuna tēnei wahanga kia ia mana e kororo tēnei āhuatanga. Kia ora, Dean.
Mōrena tātou, ke te haere tonu, ke te haere te mea nei. Mōrena, ke te haere tunu ngā mihi Kia tātou, ko tira o ku nui aku rahi, ko tai mai te rangi nei, ngā katoa o Ngati Porou, kei kone te rānei tēnā koutou. Pai ke te mea hāparangi te wā. Oh, got the live. Look, for many of you, this has been a long journey, the takutai action, and it goes back 12 or 13 years, and it was started by our papa Apirana and Katahi anō kōtau. So, and whilst we will announce this today, the detail of it really will be explained in future, because the Act won't be signed or won't be operative until February 2021. But in September of this year, Minister Little confirmed that we have customary marine title to the areas that have that the various hapu trusts have applied for in a first tranche. And so I'll be clear that the first tranche we applied for and got. It is not to say that it is the last actions or areas that we will apply for. But we took that action as your hapu trust representatives, because they were the easier ones to get through, and we took a practical and pragmatic way of attacking this, because we thought, well, if the government was going to change this year, or during the election, then we may have to go back to the drawing board. So all the work that was done by our pakeke to record our records for our takutai and marine areas have been put in affidavits. They were put before the Crown, and they accepted those claims, and therefore our customary marine title returns back to us. So what does that mean? It basically gives us legal rights as owners of the foreshore and seabed. And the foreshore and seabed basically is the mean water high mark, so that's the wet. So when the sea comes up and wets, as far as it wets, that is the land boundary. And then on the seaward side, there are various distances that it goes out to. But in the first tranche, and it will vary from takutai area to takutai area. In the first tranche, the maximum distances go out to 3 nautical miles. So, but as I said, there are areas beyond that we will be following up in the second tranche. But for now, it's a good win for us to get that actually recognised. It's been kept on the down low, mainly because, we want to keep it out of the public eye, and so that our second tranches and all those sort of things don't attract the attention that is unrequired. So it's for us to be proud of. It's for us to own, and then moving forward, we will be doing more things in that space. But it does mean a lot more work. So customary title means that we will have to establish fishing plans, manage our own fisheries in these areas, and basically create rules for ourselves about how we manage our takutai. So and it is a hapu action. So these are done by the hapu in their trusts, and the Runanga has provided the backroom support for all of that work to date. But moving forward, because there has been money allocated to the trusts from the Crown for each hapu to get on and do the things that need to be done. But and I know that the hapu trust will be going out to each of their hapu and actually giving you the detail about this, about what needs to happen next, what actions have been what rights that come from this settlement. And so rather than usurp the hapu's mana, I'll leave it for them and each of them to talk to their respective hapu about what needs to go forward. So koina anake mo tēnei wā. I know there will be questions, but I think hold those for your hapu meetings. And so for this area, Ray, you can attack Ray, and then get to kite au etahi o ngā waiapu. We will have our own hapu trust meeting somewhere in December, January. So, kia ora.
Kia ora, Dean. Tēnā koe. And just for your information, yeah. This is all as a result of ngā rohe moana o ngā hapu o Ngati Porou Takutai Act, which we went to Parliament back in 2018 to acknowledge. So, e mihi ana, kia koutou ngā pakeke, te nuinga kua haere ki tua. Hoi anō, kei kone e tahi, kei kone tau e tahi. Te mea o muri mai, ko te mana whenua, a ka tukuna tēnei wahanga ki taku tuakana pāpā kia Ray, mana tēnei wahanga i koro. Hoi anō, i roto i te tau ko tahake nei atu i te ngā kaupapa e pāna ki te mate weriweri nei, e toru ngā kaupapa i kōkiringia e Ngati Porou ki te pirimia me tona kāhui minita i tai ki roto o iri te kura o te tau o taua tau te rua rau te kaumaiwa. Ko te mana moana, ko korongia a Dean mo te mana moana, ko te mana whenua, ko te rau kūmara, ko te whakaoro o te rau kūmara, ko te mana tangata, ko tātou hauora o roto o Ngati Porou. Koena ngā take kaitā i kōkiringia ki te pirimia me tona kāhui minita. I hala mai te pirimia me tona kāhui minita, ka tau mai ki tūranga, ka piki runga pahi, ka hala mai ka haere mātou ki roto o te whānau a iri te kura. Koena ngā huatanga. Nā, ngā mea o koutou e mōhana te baseball, strike 1, strike 2, strike 3, out. Well, e toru ngā kaupapa, autai nā Ngati Porou i u ki ngā mea e rua, ko te mana moana, ko te mana whenua, ko te mana tangata, me kore ake te mate weriweri nei, ko strike 3 katoa tātou. Hoi anō, tāria te wā i roto i te toenga o ngā koro o tā tātou hui ka ki te anga pēhe ana tātou mo te hauora, mo te mana tangata. Nā reira, ka ia koe Ray, mo tēnei o ngā kaupapa te whakarauora ia te rau kūmara.
I know this mic's working, so I'll use this one. Ai aku rangatira, tēnā koutou. This time last year at our AGM for 2019, I spoke about a proposal to restore and manage the rau kūmara that had just been submitted to the Minister of Conservation, Eugenie Sage, that we were hopeful of some success in their budget bid proposal, in her budget bid for the conservation vote. And we were hoping to get about $34 million applied to the rau kūmara over 5 years. We were successful in, everyone was successful in getting $34 million secured, but it's over 4 years, which is even better, but it means we have to also plan for the following years after that 4-year period. So we regard this $34 million that's been provided as a starting point. And so since then, the budget, this year's budget included allocation for this project, but it wasn't until August this year that the final figures were confirmed by the Honourable Eugenie Sage at Mirai and Whanapanui. So since then, even before then actually, we've had an operations team of people, of experts and our own people, and some DOC people, sometimes both DOC and our own people, working away on planning for implementing the processes needed to control, eradicate if possible, the pests that are helping to destroy our Raukumara taonga. I'm advised that it's the largest landscape project of its type in New Zealand. So it has taken a while to move the planning along. We've been in an establishment phase, this group, and they're managing the transition into what they're calling the operations phase, which is it's time to start early next year. So because of the scope of the work, the scope of the Raukumara, and within Ngati Porou and Whanapanui, we're talking about 90,000 hectares of public conservation land, plus another 60 hectares that are still part of the Raukumara forest, but are privately owned. And some of that is owned by Te Runanganui o Ngati Porou, such as Puke Amaru Scenic Reserve in this rohe. So within those, underneath that operations group, they've got work streams just addressing aspects of the planning, and that should come together very soon. And there are plans to consult back with our whānau hapu within both iwi, just to update people. I know people have been a little bit impatient about getting something started. People want to get out there and start killing deer and possums and everything. Nothing to stop you, but we're trying to do this in an organised and safe way. And so that's been the role of this operations group. Some of us in this room today are part of that group, and I've publicly acknowledged those who've brought us this far and will take us further at the Mirai Hui. So that's an overview of what's happening and when and who. And I'll come to aspects of governance and management in a different part of this presentation. Nō reira, tēnā koutou.
Hei tāpiri atu I ngā kōrero mo te Raukumara, tēnei āhuatanga e kai ngākau nei au, kei te mahitahi tātou o Ngati Porou me o tātou tuāka no te whānau apanui. Mo te Raukumara te take, mo te tuitui I te whakapapa, mo te wānanga I ngā kōrero o whānau apanui mo te Raukumara, mo te wānanga I ngā kōrero a Ngati Porou mo te Raukumara. Aha ko pēhe te titiro, tātou. Engari, ko te governance arrangement he pēnei taku whakamaori. E rua ngā apanui, e rua ngā Ngati Porou, ko te Raukumara, tōna ake mana, ko tā Ngati Porou me te whānau apanui, ko te whakaro nui, aha ko pēhe te ngā kōrero e rere haere I runga I tēnei kaupapa, ko te whakaro nui mo te Raukumara. Kei te Raukumara tōna mana, ko tātā Ngati Porou me te whānau apanui, te hāpai, te hiki I te mana o te Raukumara. Koina te wairua te ia o tēnei o ngā āhuatanga o te Raukumara. Nā reira, ka tau atu ki te mana tangata. Ko tō tātou hauora services. Koera tāku e kōrero nei mo ngā kaupapa e toru. Hoi anō, te mōmonatanga o tēnei wāhanga ka kōrero ngia e te tiamana o te hauora kia tai mai eia I tētahi atu wāhanga o tā tātou hui. Hoi anō, hei te me māku e pānui e nā, mākoutou e titiro, Mo te tautaku kōrero kāri eke tēnei āhuatanga I te taukua taha ke nei, engari e manawa nui nei au I tēnei o ngā tau. Iau e whakarongo ki te ia o te kōrero o te minita mo te hauora, te ahua nei ka au tēnei kaupapa I roto I tēnei budget e haere nei. Hoi anō, koera te āhuatanga o te hauora. I tēnei wā, ka mihi ana ki tō tātou puari hauora. Me tō tātou kaihautu ki tuahine nei kia Rose. Mo te kaua I tēnei āhuatanga. Hoi anō, kai a te pata kia tai mai eia te roa ngake o ngā kōrero e pāna ki te hauora. Tēnei o ngā āhuatanga whaimuri mai nei mo te whānau oranga. Ko te olanga tamariki, tētahi kaupapa, kei runga i te ia o te wā, kei runga i ngā ngutu o ngā tāngata, kei roto i te traipūnara. Hoi anō, tēnei āhuatanga ko tō Ngati Porou tāna whakautu ki te kāwanatanga mō ngā tamariki kei raro i te maru o te ture. Tā tātou ripoata, tamaiti mokopuna ripoata. Ko te whāriki i tuku nei tēnei ripoata, ko tētahi kaupapa, tata ana te toru te kautau, ko ta hākene. Ko tātou mātua, o koutou tuākana, taina, i tērā wā, i whakatakotongia tētahi kaupapa ko te ara kāinga. Te ara kāinga i puta atu ngā pakeke o tērā wā, te uiui o rātou karangatanga maha, me pēhea i tātou, te tiaki i a tātou tamariki mokopuna, kei roto i te ture. I taua wā, ko te kōrero a taku pāpa āpirana ki te tari o tūranga. Ai te haere e pahi ki tūranga te tiki ngā tamariki whakahokia mai ki te kāinga. E tēnei āhuatanga i runga i te ia o te pua o te Hoi anō, i whakataungia i roto i tā mātou ripoata, tēnā pē i mua te paunga o te tau 25 mano. Ko tāia e Ngati Porou te tūhono mai i ngā tamariki kei raro i te ture ki o rātou whānau. Tāku e kōrero nei i o rātou whānau whakapapa. Nā reira, koena te āhuatanga o te whānau oranga i roto i a tātou. Ka pai? Well, our financial results. Hei te roangake o tēnei huihuinga ka ketu tātou ki te hohonutanga o ngā piuta. Hoi anō, ara e rārangi mai nā. A group profit after tax of 3.82 million, down from 5.33 million i te tau ko tahake nei. O tātou assets ko piki by 3.8 million, despite the losses against our financial investments due to turbulent global share markets. Well, koena ngā huatanga, ko tau tātou i roto i tēnei wā. Hoi anō te mōmonotanga o nā kōrero ka tau ki roto i te wāhanga o ngā kaute. Ko mihi au kia H. Nā reira, koina te ripoata te tiamana kia tātou. Ka haere ki te wāhanga o toitu Ngati Porou, ka tukuna tēnei wāhanga ki taku tuahine kia leo tangaere Baldwin, koia te tiamana o toitu Ngati Porou.
Ngati Porou, kei te whenua, Ngati Porou, kei te kāinga, tēnā tātou, tēnā tātou, tēnā tātou katoa. Ki ngā pakeke, kei Runanganui a tātou i tēnei rā, Tēnā koutou katoa, tēnā koutou mō tō tautoko, ia tau mō tēnei kaupapa. Kei te mihi atu a toitu ki a koutou mō o koutou tautoko. Nō reira, I runga I tērā anei te reporta o toitu Ngati Porou. This year, due to COVID, our board reacted immediately. Once lockdown came into place, we met to readjust our budget to enable funding to be set aside and to support our marae, our whānau, kei te kāinga, kei te whenua, to address the needs or the impact of COVID upon our communities. The first thing we did was establish a Mirai resilience grant, which was distributed post-COVID. That equated to, it was a one-off grant of $5,000, but we paid out a total of $220,000. Again, Mirai have benefited this year with the digital connectivity package. That package was open to every marae. 40 of our marae were successful in accessing that fund. That's a total value of $45,000 per marae over a period of 5 years. That package has enabled marae in terms of security. We have Zoom, it enables connectivity. And also the potential for health services and education. Māwaira e Taurima is another significant package that we worked on during lockdown and prior to lockdown, and it has actually come into being. We have supported 40 of our marae, 42 of our marae, to access $8.3 million. And that will be just, it will contribute to those marae to undertake a development program, some minor and some major. It's significant, and I think it's thanks to the PGF funding and the support of Shane Jones for our local region. Another positive outcome of that funding is St. Mary's Church is able to address their upgrade that they've been trying to address for the last 8 years. Education grants, we launched our first program of education grants this year, and we have been able to pay out, $49,000 in undergraduate grants, and that's at a value of $1,000 each, and 26 postgraduate grants at a value of $2,000 each. Over and above that, we have partnered with EIT Tairāwhiti in the distribution of 2 grants to the value of $6,000 and $8,000. We have also partnered up with WSP, which is an engineering group in Gisborne, and for an internship. We are working with other entities to support our whānau and to undertake their education pathways. Settling the intercompany debt. This has been an ongoing issue for Toitu and Trump Nui. This was the how we were being funded by Trump Nui, and through the sorry, yeah. Okay, it was a loan from Toitu to Trump Nui, and it, after each year, increased to the value of a $20.8 million debt. that was owed to Toitū via Runanganui. We have settled that debt through a promissory note, and from this year on, an annual coupon payment will be made to Toitū circa $1.1 million per year. So that gives the foundation of a steady income year on year, this year forward. This year, Toitū undertook an EOI process to appoint new directors to the Toitū Ngati Porou board, and this was undertaken by Runanganui. The incoming directors will take on their positions against the backdrop of a 5-year plan aligned to our strategic objectives and remit for Toitū. Do you want to announce? Yeah.
What's the question? Oh, we can send that to you. Yeah. Yeah, we can put it online. Okay. Have you, Lero, kumutukwe? Oh, you're still going?
These are the distributions that have been made this year by Toitū Ngati Porou. We've paid out $370,000 in grants this year. Our total payments over the past 5 years has been $4,906,344. $45,000 is the remaining distribution for our real funding. In Tauruhere grants, we've paid $25,000 to about 6 Tauruhere. We've had minor projects and education scholarships. We've had out $101,000. Power Wars itself, it pays for itself. Year on year, we receive funding from sponsors, so it covers our costs for Power Wars. So our total Ngati Porou distributions from Toitū is $677,000. Over and above that, Toitū, from day one, we made the commitment to every dollar we distributed that we will try to increase that by three times. I'm proud to say that over our 7 years as Toitū directors, we have achieved that. This year alone, we have increased our distribution by $10 million. So over the 7 years that we have represented you, we have made a distribution to whānau about $12 million. So $5 million was the, we came in where the commitment from the Runanga was $5 million in payments to Ngati Porou Mirai. Our budget annually at that stage was $1 million. So immediately, when given our remit to deliver all these services to Ngati Porou, we were really operating on a nil budget. So moving forward, we want to complete the inaugural Mirai Grants program. We want to scope an interim Mirai Grants program for 20 and 21 budget, and we want to maintain the Ngati Porou Tauruhere Grants program. For mātauranga, the development of a Ngati Porou mātauranga in education strategy, and that's with the input from across Ngati Porou. We want to confirm the scope of the Ngati Porou Histories project. We want to refresh the Ngati Porou real investment priorities and we want to initiate a Ngati Porou outcomes measurement pilot. I think that's it. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's our report this year from Toitū Ngati Porou. I want to say thank you. This is, I stand here today, this is the last report from the inaugural team of Toitū Ngati Porou. Our team has consisted of Amo Haere Haukamo, Wiki Gilfrey, Amos Forrester, and Ray Kohere. And, and also that we must acknowledge that the original, alongside us in the inaugural team were Tina Porou and Barry Suter. Tēnā tātou katoa.
Kia ora, e ka mā, tēnei wā, ka tukuna te rākau kororo ki te tiamana o te hunga e tia ki ne ngā pūtea a Ngati Porou, Ngati Porou Holdings Company. Kia ora, mā tānuku, ka ia koe te wā. Kei te toti koe.
Yeah. No, this is to prove that lawyers. Is this on? Yeah, no, this just proves that lawyers should keep on using their hands and sitting down rather than trying to do other stuff they get hurt. Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou, hui tahi nei, tēnei rā, ki tēnei hui ātou, mō te Runanganui o Ngati Porou. So, as soon as I work out how to work this, here we go. So this is the presentation from the Ngati Porou Holding Company. So this was not a year for the faint-hearted, 2020. One point in March, you know how those graphs sort of like, they have hills in them. Well, this was like a straight line that went down in March, and the assets that we had in investments lost, I think, $23 million in the space of a very short period of time. It was no different to the rest of the market. In fact, a lot of the market went down further. So we got some benefit from the fact that we had quite a diversified portfolio. We also had the benefit of having seen this a couple of times. So we saw it happen when Brexit happened. We saw it with another market correction. And the way that our investments work is that we try and judge performance over a 5-year period rather than on a shorter term, because you get volatility in the markets. And there was a decision to make at that point. I know lots of people were selling. The problem is when the market's low and you sell, then all you do is you lock in a loss. So we made the decision just to stick with our strategy, and ultimately it's paid off. And despite the volatile way the year went, we actually ended up returning a positive EBIT of $6.5 million, which is not a lot on the total number of assets that we hold, but we're very happy it's a black number, not a red number, which is what we thought we might be looking at one stage during the course of the year. So revenue for the year was $21.1 million. We had total costs of 14.6. Bearing in mind that those revenue numbers are consolidated, so it consolidates in the revenue from the farm, the revenue from the seafood company and the forestry activities, and that's why our costs are also high, because they're all of the costs associated with those businesses that go into that consolidated number. Total assets that we hold are now up at $244.3 million. And that's assets less the distributions that we've been making year on year to the Runanganui. As I said, it doesn't represent a great return on assets. 6.5 million on $244 million is just under 3%. And you know, our aim has to be to continue to make, first of all, that return number higher, but also when we get to the strategy part of things, what we are starting to look at is how can we invest in Ngati Porou, not just to make better returns for the holding company, but also to try and affect the economic circumstances of our people in our region. So one of the metrics that we look at is return on assets, growth on assets, but we also look at where can we make economic impact. Those things are not easy to measure, but it's something that the board has been grappling with for the last couple of years and will continue to look at as we move from what you like is what I would describe as the startup phase, which is to be quite conservative, to make sure that we can pay dividends, to make sure that we get some growth, into a stage which is reflected in the Tahuna Te Ahi strategy that the company has developed, which is about looking for direct investment opportunities that will not only give us better returns, but will also provide benefit to Ngati Porou more generally in terms of jobs and other economic activities. And finally, this year we paid a dividend of $3.9 million. Our annual commitment, you'll remember, was initially $2 million, but now we have an annual commitment to the Runanganui to make distributions of $5 million. $1.1 million is made up of the payment that goes to Toitu under the promissory note. We also agreed to then pay a balance of $3.9 million to the Runanganui. Some of that is also passed through to Toitu, so that Toitu, I think its base operating budget will be $1.6 million on an ongoing basis. Oh, I'm in charge. So what were the things that affected us this year? The key themes, well, COVID-19 was the key theme for pretty much everywhere on the planet, and it also affected us. We did confirm the Tahuna Te Ahi economic strategy, which, as I say, has a number of components, but the key metrics that we are looking at are returns on assets, growth in assets, and also what we call DEI, so direct economic impact. So what is the economic impact of the activity that we undertake? So it's not enough for us to earn money. If we just wanted to earn money, we'd own a whole lot of property in Auckland. What we're trying to think about is, okay, how can we invest that money in order to create new opportunities and to improve the economic well-being of Ngati Porou? We recruited our first dedicated Chief Executive Officer in Shane Walker. I don't know if you've met Shane, he's down the end there. Do you want to stand up, Shane, just for a second? So Shane is from Ngati Porou ki te Tonga, from Te Wairua, and comes very well recommended, and has hit the ground running, and you'll be seeing him around more and more as he gets into his job. We've continued to do work in relation to the Ngati Porou Mirai collective. We've commenced what we've called Ngati Porou Manuka, which is a related matter that I'll touch on. We do have a forestry strategy, which I'll also touch on, and we're seeing the ongoing evolution of management and governance within the group. Okay, it's not working. No, it's just not working. Okay, so if I had another... Does it work if I throw it at it? Does that work? Did I turn it off by accident, you? Yep, is that right? Can someone just do it? Can someone just do it for me? I'll just... Go on, Hugh, just... Can you put me on the next slide? Because I'm standing in the way of lunch. No, you don't. So dealing with the individual business units, the first one is Ngati Porou Seafoods Group. It recorded a net profit of 0.49 million. So you'll recall that in past years we've had profits from Ngati Porou Seafoods as high as almost $2 million. Seafoods is really challenging at the moment. It's a really tough industry to be in, like lots of other primary industries. But the view we take of these is these are legacy assets that we have. They represent our history and tradition in the business and activity of fishing. So a lot of work is going into thinking about, okay, what does the future for fishing look like? There has been a deliberate strategy to date of not just being an ace trader, so in other words, leasing our quota out to someone on an annual basis to catch. The strategy has been about continuing to have an active presence in the fishing industry. So you know, it does produce a positive number for us, but we would like to have a higher number coming out of that given the value of the assets that we hold. There have been some changes within the Seafoods group. So Mark Ngata has left the company and gone to work for Moana New Zealand, which I think is a credit to both Mark, but also the time that he spent with Ngati Porou Seafoods, that he was chosen for that job. It's a larger job in terms of scale and in terms of opportunity. And it's good to see our people going from our businesses to these other businesses. We have also made, as part of a general restructure of the subsidiaries, decision to no longer have a standalone Ngati Porou Seafoods Group board. So the board will now sit within, will be more like a subset of the holding company. It does have to have its own separate board because of the requirements of the Māori Fisheries Act, but they'll basically be holding company directors who are there to hold the seat, with management being directed through Shane and through the management team. So it's essentially removing a layer of governance, which has served us very well. And as you make these changes, they're not easy things to do because we had a very good board within that company, led by Whaimutu, who has led fisheries for us for the better part of 20 years or more. And he, alongside others of us, have been the stewards of that company for a long time. So it's important that we make these changes because we think these are the right changes in terms of the future direction of the group, but we need to acknowledge all of the people who have contributed as directors of that company and the hard work that they've done, maintaining those assets, maintaining an active involvement for Ngati Porou within that business. So that means employing our people, being more than quota traders and actually being involved in the business and activity of fisheries in an active sense, which is an unusual thing. A lot of iwi just flick their ace. So we have been and remain a leader in the Māori fishing space because we've kept that active involvement, and that's down to the hard work of all of those people that have been involved in that business. And I do need to particularly acknowledge Whaimutu because he has been the leader of that business for a long period of time. We managed to have full employment through COVID-19. We distributed fish to different parts of the community, and ahia, which is the smoked product, has been recognised for its quality and is in itself perhaps part of the future for us as we move away from selling commodities to trying to find better and smarter ways of selling our fish so that we can improve our returns. Okay, that was flash. Pākehiro Farms. Pākehiro also made a loss for the first time in a while from an accounting point of view. There are two things that affected Pākehiro. One was the drought. And what the drought meant was that the farm incurred additional grazing costs. A decision was also made to not sell stock towards the end of the year, which affected the overall profit number that the farm produced. And the reason for that was because of uncertainty about how easily we would replace lambs that we sold. Again, it was affected by COVID-19. As with the fishing company, there was full employment through that period. It has also been involved through Hilton Collier in the Waiapu Restoration project and is continuing to look to support talent pathways. So we don't talk about it a lot, but on an annual basis, PFL supports one or two people from this region to go away and to get training, either support with fees or support with things like saddles and other bits of equipment that they might need as part of that training. And what we found is, whereas farming used to be in our blood and it's what every young person used to do, it's not so common any longer. So there's a need to invest in our talent. So Ngati Porou forests, we're at the stage where the trees that we've been planting are old enough that we do a revaluation, and that affects our overall asset values. So what it means is as the tree grows, it starts to have a value in and of itself, and you start to recognise that in your accounts. So far we've planted from the land that has been returned to us from Ernst Law 1, just over 4,000 hectares, which has been planted in pine. That activity continues to support employment, is starting to create a forest of some scale. We're currently in the process where we are looking at the idea of getting a joint venture partner in for the continued development of that forest. The total forest area is about 20,000 hectares. To date, we've been able to do the replant and fund it using the return we get from the rentals that Ernst Law 1 pays to us as the owner of the land. But we've reached the point in time where we're going to have to start to look at silviculture, and whereas that land's returned, the rental return diminishes to us because Ernst Law have a small area of land. And so the question for us is as much as anything a cash flow question. So do we continue to use our cash in order to replant and do those sorts of things, or do we bring someone else's cash in to assist with that because we think we can be using our cash for better stuff? And so that's the type of exercise that we're going through at the moment. As with all of these things, there's a lot of water to pass under the bridge, and really what we're trying to do is think about ways that we can make the capital that we do have work the best way that we can. So we still want to have ownership in the forest. We still want to be able to, if you like, control the wood flow, because control of the wood flow leads itself to downstream developments like maybe wood processing and those sorts of things, which can add jobs and add value. But there's a cash consequence of that, and those are the things that we're looking to balance. You'll also be aware, and there was something in the paper, that Ernst Law 1 is selling its interest in the other 14-odd thousand hectares of trees that it has. We have made a decision to participate in that process. We think we need to, because we're the landlord ultimately, and we think that there is a better opportunity for us if we can get involved in that at the right price to also have an influence over forest management practice and other things which we think fit better with our broader view about forestry and forest strategy. If someone else owns it, and who knows, someone might, because they're prepared to pay more than we're prepared to pay, then they're free to manage that forest as they wish in accordance with the license. And then there is the broader forest strategy. So you won't be able to read that, but hopefully you'll be able to see it when the slides are there. That's a one-pager. So what we're looking to do with the forest going forward, and we have behind this done an analysis of all of the land that those Ruatore and Tokumaru forests are on. There is a requirement because of the ETS and also because of the terms of the resource consents to return that land to forest cover. But what we are looking at is altering the mix of that forest. So there will still be pine on there, but we're looking at roughly a 70-30 mix between pine and natives. Amongst other things, setbacks from waterways are currently 10 metres. We're looking to double that to 20 metres. And we're also thinking about the idea of, are there other areas that we just don't think are appropriate for a pine forest that should be basically retired from production forestry for reasons to do with waterway protection and just better environmental management. So we're really trying to apply a lens to the forest business which recognises the economic benefit of it. And the fact that you can turn that investment in trees into cash within a reasonable time period, relative to other species, but thinking about it in terms of our obligations as the stewards of that land on behalf of Ngati Porou. And then that means better forest management. That means being more aware of the environmental impacts of the forestry, and it also means being aware of the impact that a clear felling regime may have on waterways and those sorts of things. And we've seen what happened in Tolaga Bay. So a part of it would also be looking at the forest harvest practice so that you don't get the slash occurring in the same way that it currently occurs. Even down to looking at things that you might do over time with the slash. But of course, your best opportunity to have the biggest impact early is about also trying to become the owner of that forest earlier rather than waiting for the next 25 years to play out, and for Ernst Law to just progressively return that land to us. You can take a broader view of across the entire forest, which is therefore about managing it as an entire forest rather than just managing the bits that get returned to you when they get returned to you, which is driven by Ernst Law and Ernst Law's priorities. So amongst other things, that would also include looking at places where we might plant manuka as part of the honey proposition. So we do currently put some hives on there, but is there an opportunity to also include manuka as part of the replant alongside the other natives? Ultimately, what it's aiming for is 120 sustainable jobs over time. And what we really do want to do is see if we can better control things like harvest operations, but also ultimately the wood flow. Because if you can control the wood flow, then it actually makes the idea of doing processing in this region a much more viable activity than it is, because we're not reliant on Ernst Law or someone else having trees that they might put through that. We can make the decision about what we do with our trees and where we send them. In terms of the manuka business, so we have the Ngati Porou Mere. For the first time, this made a loss. We actually do very well out of manuka because you basically put the hives on our land. We get 100% of the honey that comes off the hives that we own, and we get a percentage of those that we don't own. And then we just store it away and we sell it. And not a lot of capital in that, fabulous returns. Although the decision has been made that if we really want to be thinking about tahuna te ahi, about making a difference, then that reasonably low risk, quite passive model is not the thing that's going to grow our Ngati Porou honey industry. And so that's driven the loss, because there has been some investment that we've made in trying to reposition that business. So some of you will be aware that some work has been going in with a number of other Ngati Porou landowners to look at the establishment of an extraction facility within this area. So the identification of a piece of land where that will be constructed is very close. It's been through quite a rigorous process. And that rig is continuing, but hopefully we'll be able to very soon say what that is. And the aim is to use that as a basis to continue to build a Ngati Porou owned honey business, which has been the ambition for some time. Prior to thinking about this, the basic model that we were running in relation to manuka is that we would get a rental for someone else putting the hive on our land, and that was the extent of the value that we extracted from it. What we're looking to do is move from a model where we are just the landlords in someone else's operation to us being the owner of the honey that comes off it, and over time being able to build a much more vertically integrated type of business where we can look at other opportunities that are built on the back of our ownership of the production and the extraction activities. And this is the first step in that process. Currently there are 8 employees. There are 1,600 hives currently this is just on the holding company's land. Now, if you listen to the voiceover that I did for the video that's on the website, I say there were 1,800 hives. There were. At the time that I did that. Well, that wasn't COVID, but what happens with the hives is that you do an ongoing process of looking at their quality. Some hives, Woolie's back here, he'll be able to explain better technically what happens, but if they're not well kept, then you lose those hives basically. And it is an ongoing process. So we will get some fluctuation in the numbers as we work through hive health and those sorts of issues. We are in a transition from our former beekeeper to Willie and the rest of his team. And so some of that has come through that transition process. But ultimately our aim is to go to 3,000 hives on our land, and that will be the cornerstone of the supply that will go through the extraction facility, which needs about 6,000 hives in order for it to be viable. Hauiti berries, so you'll have seen this. We're very proud of this in the sense that this is a joint venture relationship that we've entered into with the Hauitian Corporation. It wasn't necessarily an easy relationship for us to establish. I mean, you know our politics and how those things work through. But when we looked at it, and I explained this last time, there's an opportunity for Ngati Porou in relation to horticulture. So currently on that flat land, we might get, let's say, $1,000 per hectare return. On a hectare of berries, we can do $50,000 per hectare. And you can employ more people. So, Pakihiroa across almost 3,000, I think, hectares of farmland employs on an ongoing basis about 12 people. Now that's full-time employment across the year, so you have to take that into account. But Hauiti berries during the picking part of the year, this year we had 50 people that we inducted, about 20 regular attendees, and a pool of 30 people who were involved in the picking season. And so that's across a 4-hectare berry operation. There is a lot of work to be done. The holding company has identified horticulture as a potential opportunity. And what we're looking at here is a tentative first step into it. So we're trying to understand, okay, what are the costs? How easy is it to do in a region such as this? What are our challenges? So water is one. And actually labour is another. So part of our decision to establish this, because we could establish it in other places on the coast, part of the decision to have the joint venture with Hauiti and why we put the time into establishing that relationship is that we knew we were close enough to Gisborne that if we needed to bring labour in, we could bring labour in. And it turns out that is an ongoing challenge. We had one day where in the picking season, there are a few events on in Tolaga where 7 people turned up to pick instead of the 20 or 30 that we need. And that's important because you have about a 2 or 3 day window to pick. If you don't pick a berry when it's ready in that 2 or 3 day window, then it gets soft. Then when it gets to Berry Co, who we supply it to in Tauranga, they'll reject it. And then we have to bring it all the way back to Tolaga or to Gisborne and find another way of dealing with it. Now that can make a big difference because we are relatively early in the season. We were getting like, $10 or $11 a punnet at the time that we were putting it into market, instead of like the $5 you get now in the middle of the season. So missing a day, you can get over it when you're like we are at an early stage. So we had strong yield, 16 metric tonne. We only planned for 10 because the berries are still growing out. But next year we'll have 50. And the year after that we'll have 100. And so the consequences of not having the labour there when you need to pick suddenly becomes much bigger from a financial point of view and in terms of the ongoing viability of the operation. And it points to a challenge that we have here if we are going to grow these sorts of activities within our rohe. We need the people to do the work. We are going to have to invest in labour. We're going to have to invest in training. And we do need to have a commitment to, on the part of the people who are doing these jobs to be there to do it. Our best pickers were retired women, because they turned up every day and they did the picking, and so they were reliable and they were efficient. So just throwing that out there, that you know, even in retirement, we're getting carried by our women, you know. But there are employment opportunities. We will have a better idea next year just how viable this is. So we've kept it at 4 hectares. We have maybe another year to go before we have a really good idea about, okay, are we right with our predictions about what this is capable of producing? But we've had a promising year. So our loss of $270,000 is actually less than we budgeted by quite a bit, because our tonnage was greater. Chairman's telling me to hurry up. Okay, so tourism. I've only got 2 more slides, I promise, Mr. Chairman. Shane Walker's got me on the clock anyway, so I'm pretty sure I owe him a drink. So again, there was no impact on employment. The Hikurangi experience has been described as a New Zealand hero experience. None of us will be surprised by that. It has actually achieved the gold qual mark, which is a testament to Monty and his team and the work that they've done. And we're now starting to work at better integrating the tourism activity in with Pakihiroa. So you've got the waka that's there. We're looking at some reasonably simple accommodation and trying to overcome the challenges now that we have with getting people to come to the maunga. It will need investment. So we will have to continue to invest in this. Tourism businesses don't just sort of grow like that. They tend to develop and grow over time. But one of the benefits actually is that this is still very much a domestic tourism opportunity. So when at some future stage we can have international visitors come back here again, there's a further opportunity for us there to really grow that experience. Okay, so in terms of fund management, we have been working with Cambridge Associates for the last 7 years. As I said, we judge it over a 5-year period, so there's the last 5 years, and you can see the roller coaster that we've been on. This was quite it's quite a ride that we go on with those investments. So in the 5 years to date, or in the last 5 years, we've had a performance of 5.7% against our benchmark, which is 3.9%. So our target has been 2.5% over the rate of inflation. And the reason you benchmark it to the rate of inflation is if you keep with the rate of inflation, then you're not getting growth. If you're lower than the rate of inflation, then actually your real value is going down. So we set ourselves a target of 2.5% over the rate of inflation, and the modelling that was done told us that if we were able to achieve that, we can meet our dividend obligations and we would still get growth. And getting growth is important because that's what ultimately will increase our spending power over time. And that 5.7% is taking into account the likes of Brexit and also what's happened in the last year. We're currently reviewing the strategy. We're looking at the idea of chasing a higher return off our investments in order to support the likes of Tahuna Te Ahi. That will come with a different mix, with some more risk and probably with less liquidity, but it is something we think we have the confidence to do, having been through the last 7 years or so. So looking ahead, we're going to be doing the seafoods and farm strategy refresh. We're going to continue to work on those areas I've talked about: tourism, property, food and beverage, horticulture. We're doing the SIPO review, so that's the fund management review. We will be making some announcements, I hope very shortly, in relation to the Mirai extraction facility, and we will also be much more actively looking at investment opportunities, direct investment opportunities that we might be able to undertake, utilising our balance sheet in the best way that we can to improve returns, but also to try and make some things happen for Ngati Porou. Now that won't be without risk. I would be surprised if over the 5 years of going through that process, all the stories that you got about how things have gone will be success stories. But the idea of Tahuna Te Ahi is to ignite the Ngati Porou economy. So amongst other things, that will mean looking at pushing the boundaries of it and exploring new opportunities for us. And the key will not so much be whether it works or not, but making sure that we do it in a way which is smart. So if there is something that doesn't go as we would like it to go, that we haven't bet the house on it. And I'm sure with the directors that are on the holding company that won't happen. Look, I have one more thing before I pass it over to Tepa. This will be, like Lil, my last AGM as the chair of the Ngati Porou Holding Company. All I'd like to say is, first of all, I want to acknowledge the directors that have been on the board while I've been there. So we have Whaimutu, Diana, Dean, who's come on recently, Kristen Kohere Suta, Tepa, Tiwana, who's here, and I'm pretty sure I've forgotten someone. Bailey Mackey. Actually, no, that was a deliberate oversight. I'm not thanking Bailey at all. And Bobby, where's Bobby? Oh, okay. Well, in fact, I got 2 reasons to thank Bobby in that case. Who have worked really hard to get us to the point that we've gotten us to. And there are the likes of Bailey and Dean and Bobby, Diana, and 2 new directors to be appointed who will continue to have responsibility for moving this forward. In my view, you're going to be in really good hands, and I'm looking forward to attending the next AGM as a spectator to comment on how well or not they're doing. Because I figure if they do a great job, I'm taking credit. If they don't, then I'm just going to blame them. And so the last thing I'll say in that regard is, look, I don't end this role with any sadness. It's been a privilege to have had this opportunity to serve Ngati Porou. And I'm very grateful to the Runanganui and to everybody else who supported the holding company over that time. Hoi anō, kia ora tātou.
Kia ora mātānuku, tēnā hoki koutou ngā kaitiaki o Holkou, tēnā hoki koutou ngā kaitiaki o Toitu. Tēnei te mihi taurangi kia koutou katoa I hāpai, I waha o tātou ia Toitu, ia Holkou. I roto I ngā taumaha ko tahake nei, e anga whakamua nei tātou I tēnei wā. I tēnei wā ka tukuna te rākau kia rei, he kororo wana kia tātou.
Kia ora anō tātou. Now that the Toitu and the Holco presentations have been made, it's my honour as the chair of the Appointments Committee to announce to this hui te Ngati Porou the replacement directors for both of those subsidiary boards. There were, for each, there's a maximum of 7 and a minimum of 5 places on Holco and Toitu. So I'll just name the names. I won't actually say too much about them in case I don't do them justice. You'll know most of them. So I'll read out the names for Toitu, if I can remember them all, and in no particular order. They are Charlotte Gibson, Patrick Tangaire, Ngāri Muparata, Wipere Mita, Naomi, or Nomai as she is known, White Hood, Ani Pahuru Huriwai, and Agnes Walker. So that's a brand new board of 7 Toitu members. Lil has already mentioned those of us, including myself, who are retiring members, and the new directors take up their position as of 1 January 2021. There were 2 places to be filled on the holding company, and we have filled both of those positions. The first person who will take the place of Kristen Kohere-Suter, who ends her term on the 31st of December, is Sir Robert McLeod. I will make a bit of an exception in this case, actually, because it's not often you have a Sir applying to be on one of your boards. But Rob is exceptional. He's recognised and has standing both nationally and internationally in taxation and finance circles. So he's pleased to be on, and we're pleased to have him. And he led our treaty negotiations process very ably and successfully. And the other director is Henare Walker, who will start his term at the end of March. And I'm sorry, Ma, you have to stay on with Holdco until then. So you're still responsible. So those are the 2 replacement members for Holdco. I do need to say that there was a lot of interest in the positions on both boards, and we had some excellent applications, and it's a pity we can't appoint more or all of them. The caliber was very, very high. So that's where the Appointments Committee arrived, and I should say that the Appointments Committee is made up of board members, Holdco members, Tuitu members, who had no personal conflicts with any of the applicants. Kia ora tātou.
Thank you, Ray. E mihi ana ki era o ngā tuākana taina, tuāhine, tamariki, a mokopuna ko tau I roto I o tātou kamupene, ia Holdco me Toitu, ki te arahi I e nā kamupene a Ngati Porou I roto I ngā tau, kei mui a tātou. No reira, tēnā koutou, hika mā. Hoi anō, can I ask you all to just stand and say to the person next to you, you are looking so well. You are looking so well too. You are looking so well. You are looking so well. I didn't say go out. So can I invite you to take your chairs again, because we're moving on to the Ngati Porou Hui report, and tukuna tēnei wā ki taku tuakana kia Tepa, ko ia te tiamana o Ngati Porou Hui, kai aia ngā kōrero I tēnei wā. Kia ora.
Kia ora tātou. Te tiamana, tēnā koe. Ngā mema o te puari matua, ngā mihi kia koutou, ngā pakeke ki aku pāpa me aku kōkā hoki. Tēnā koutou, Ngati Porou hoki, tēnā koutou, ngā mihi kia koutou katoa. Going to start with COVID response, and really what I'm going to do today is not go over what's on the screen before you. You can all read that, but what I want to do is to tell you the story behind the numbers and the words that are on the screens, because the numbers and tell one story, but really I want to fill in the vivid colour behind those. Which is the story, which is the Ngati Porou story. But in a nutshell, our COVID testing coverage was the best in the country. It speaks for itself, and it shouldn't be a surprise. But I describe it, really, that whole process as preparing for war. And when you prepare for war, you do a number of things. You shore up your defences, you protect your supply lines, you secure those supply lines, and you protect your key infrastructure. And then the other thing you do really is keep in close contact with the troops, because at the end of the day, the key distinguishing factor that determines success is really morale, and people want to know what's happening. So it's really a do-it-yourself approach. Take action. Don't wait around for somebody to come and tell you what to do. You take action, you be proactive, and you have to do things yourself. Look, and in that vein, I want to tell you the Bunnings story. So Bunnings, most people know, well, I think probably everybody's been into a Bunnings store. There are roughly 140 Bunnings stores spread across Australia and New Zealand. It's an Australian company. There are, I think, roughly 100 in Australia and 40 in New Zealand, in most communities. And really, during lockdown, all those stores were closed down. But they did an unusual thing. They asked their managers of all those stores to actually keep their ear to the ground about what was happening in the communities in which they serve. And then they actually asked them, who in your communities is doing a really good job in terms of communicating with their clients, with their customers over this lockdown period. So we're talking about 140 managers that represent hundreds of communities across Australia and New Zealand, and they represent millions of customers. And this is what they decided. They decided that the organisation that best kept their customers and clients connected and communicated with was Ngati Porou Hui. Yeah, it's worth shouting about. And they gave us a $5,000 award, and which that's nice. That's nice. So when you're driving home, call into Bunnings and buy something. But at this point, I want to acknowledge Radio Ngati Porou. Because they gave us the platform to speak to the communities. And for us, Dr. Willie Jourdain did that most days, and he did a great job. It wasn't always perfect, you know that, but people who are facing a crisis, they want to know what's going on. And so, I'm really grateful to Radio Ngati Porou for the constant chatter of comfort that went across the airwaves. And whenever Darylene rang me and asked me if I'd go on radio and talk about whatever it was, I always said yes, because I know the reassuring value it has to people in remote communities. And having been raised in a remote community, you understand the value of those things. They're simple things. So, Radio Ngati Porou, I salute you today. Thank you for keeping our whānau connected. And so, we've got to give credit and honour where honour is due. Just in terms of the Bunnings Award, we've taken some of that money and we're investing it into heritage fruit trees. And so around all our clinics, we're going to start planting heritage fruit trees alongside the marakai. So all the gardens, so we want to have clinics that are surrounded with trees. Oh, I'm still on that one. So we want to have trees that are, clinics that are surrounded by trees and gardens, and that provide life and represent life and wellness to our communities. So. I just want to touch on one more thing in terms of COVID, in terms of its effect. Last year at the AGM, the issue of nurses' pay parity was raised and got a lot of people pretty excited. there were some performances that really were worthy of Academy nominations. Last year the ministers invited us to submit a budget bid for this year's budget. Now this is not a normal thing. You have to be invited to do so. You can't just say, I want to put a bid in for this or bid in for that. You have to be invited by ministers to do this, and they invited us to do that. And we put in a budget bid for, it was an extensive range of things, a lot of things, for lots of extra services. And included in that was a significant amount of funding to help us bridge that gap for nurses' pay parity. And I spoke to the minister at the end of February, and these are his words. He said, I think you can expect some good news from the budget. But 2 weeks later, COVID happened, and that's the only reason I mention it in this segment here. COVID happened, and that changed everything. It changed everybody's world. I've been reassured throughout that process by both officials and ministers that when COVID happened, in the redrawing or redesigning of the budget, post-COVID budget, so it's a post-COVID budget, they pushed a lot of bids off the table before ours, and they wanted to reassure us that that was the case. When it came down to looking at stacking up all the bids in a row, there were some that they pushed off the table easy, and then it came around to a tight discussion. And ours was one of the last ones left on the table. Now that says something. But enough about that. I think. Oh, next. Look, you can read all those numbers. And I won't read them out. And you can look at the annual report, because they're all in the annual report too. But I want to tell you the story behind these numbers. And the story is really this. Our people do amazing work. Our people do amazing work, and this was during a year of COVID. So I'm not going to dwell on that, because I know I'm standing between you and lunch. So next slide, please. Innovation and technology. Look, once again, you can read through this, but what I want to do is talk a little bit the story behind the story that goes alongside Te Ranga Wairua or Paratene. This is an aspect of our organisation that has been flying below the radar for a long, long time, in actual fact, for over 10 years. And we have deliberately kept it below the radar. Well, and now I'm talking about it openly today because we want to change its trajectory, because it is something else. It has flown below the radar, but it leaves a very large footprint in the area of research. And we proudly raise the banner of Dr. Pat's legacy. And it's a legacy about learning, and it's a legacy about research. And we carry that banner aloft proudly with dignity to his memory, to his legacy, to his unstinting commitment to Ngati Porou in the area of research and learning. And so I want to tell you that we are conducting world-class research inside the Hauora. I want to tell you about the first of one of these projects, because we've been doing lots of projects, and it's with an organisation called Genomics Aotearoa. And this is world-class research, and it has far-reaching consequences around precision medicine. So the government wants to create what they call a repository. That's basically a storehouse for data about genetic data. All right, genetic data for the population of this country. So, and they want to use this project that we're involved in to establish protocols and all the things that are necessary in order to collect and process and store and use that data. So currently there are genetic databases. They come primarily out of Europe and the United States. So there are no genetic databases for Africa, for Asia, and for the Pacific, including New Zealand. So this is about establishing genetic databases for New Zealand. So this is a first for New Zealand, and it's based around Ngati Porou. So we're going to get 100 Ngati Porou participants and do their genome sequencing. That's a process in which they take a tissue and they do a whole genetic profile. Now, if you did this 12 years ago, it would cost you $100,000 to do that for one person. If you did it 10 years ago, it would still cost you somewhere between 10, 20, maybe even 30,000. The price is coming down all the time. So we would be doing 100 of these, all right? And the Crown is paying for this. So what we do this for is that we establish this storehouse of genetic profiles. Then we put it alongside your clinical data, the person's clinical data. So where they've gone to the doctor for whatever the issue is and whatever the treatment was, that's put alongside that data. And then the third part of it is to put alongside that their whakapapa. So you have as complete picture as possible, and it's a unique picture for every person that is within that repository. So this is the first step to precision medicine. So what do I mean by that is that currently, if you go to see your doctor and you have a particular illness, a disease, then you present with these symptoms, a whole stack of symptoms. And then alongside that, they will recommend remedies, which might be treatments or medication, and it'll be a whole lot of things. Now, for most people, those things work. For some people, they might work a little bit. For some people, they don't work at all. And for other people, they actually have an adverse reaction. So what we do is we take the broad treatments, and then using precision medicine, you actually narrow the scope. So you then start to target particular issues based on their unique makeup, which comes from their genetic DNA and everything else about them. Do you understand that? So you know that with a whole broad range of treatments, you know that this one won't work, that one won't work, that one won't work, that one will work, that one won't work, but for this person here, this is the one. So that's how you target, and that's what precision medicine is all about. That's what we're involved in. This is the first for New Zealand, and it's the first in the world. So it's big. It's big. So look, that's just one of the things. I can tell you about a couple of others. Here's another one, GoBro. So this is a research based around taking sets of brothers. One of the brothers has gout, the other doesn't. And so we look at what are the factors that determine whether this one gets gout and that one doesn't. So you begin to reveal a whole lot of things about narrowing your choices about tailoring medicine or treatments for particular people. Because in the end, we want prevention is the number one thing we want. Prevention, the second thing you want is early detection and early intervention. All right? Those are the fundamentals of public health. Another one is I'll tell you about this one. This is a particular gene. It's called CREBRF. It's CREBRF. So that's, every gene has a name. And so this gene is called CREBRF. And it's called the All Black gene. So it is only found in Māori and Pacifica peoples. It's a Polynesian gene. It's only found in Polynesian races. And what this gene does is actually the people who have it, not everybody has it, but the people who have it are generally taller, so it's often called a height gene. So that it gives greater height. But it also has the people often have a predisposition to obesity, but they also have a defense against metabolic disease like gout and other things. Does everybody understand that? Okay, so So that's CREB RF. So this is the range of research that we've been involved in, but flying below the radar. But now we're changing the trajectory, so it's now above the clouds. All right. So that's who we are. What are we doing now? Oh look, I'll just tell you stories. But now the reason why we're involved in all this research is really it's about our goal to live long and live well. That's ultimately what this is about. You know, I go to lots of forums in the health sector, and I'm not from the health sector. But I go to lots of forums in the health sector, and I carry only one set of statistics in my head. That's this, it's life expectancy, right? Life expectancy for the country is 81. Remember these numbers, so repeat them after me. 81. That's life expectancy for the country. Life expectancy for the Tairāwhiti district is 78. Say, 78. Life expectancy for Māori in the Tairāwhiti district is 71. 71. Life expectancy for Ngati Porou living up the coast here is 69. Say it, 69. That is a 12-year equity gap, and that is totally unacceptable. You shouldn't accept it. We don't accept it. That's why we're doing all this stuff. And that's why I'm telling you these stories today, because that 12-year life expectancy gap is unacceptable. So, and if we don't do this research, no one else is going to do it. No one. All right, so we only do research that is directly relevant to us, that leads to direct health gain for us, and that will help us to leapfrog generations. And that is to hasten the path to precision medicine. That's why we're doing this. And look, it's also part of reaffirming the belief in learning and research. And that's what Dr. Pat was all about. And so we want to come back to that and say, you know, we remember that and we honour that and we're committed to that and we're going to walk in that path. Because that's what we're about as an organisation. The other reason too is that it creates pathways, career pathways, and they are great career pathways. Medicine and health in general is one of the most rapidly expanding pathways that people can get into it. So we want you to think about your mokos and get them to be involved in health medicine. And the other reason is it's such an exciting field to work in. And lastly, it's about, no. What was the last one? What was my last slide? Oh yeah. It's about creating a destination of choice. Creating a destination of choice. You know, a couple of months ago, I went to a conference for rural hospitals. Rural hospitals, there are roughly 30 rural hospitals around the country, like Te Puia. None of them is like Te Puia. So there are roughly 15 in the North Island, 15 in the South Island. Every one of them spoke. And the number one issue that is common to every one of those rural hospitals, including ours, is recruitment and retention of clinical staff. That's no surprise, all right? But I want to be clear that it is the number one issue for every rural hospital in this country. It's not just a Ngati Porou problem, it is a nationwide problem. And it's not just a nationwide problem, it is a world problem. So what does that mean? It means that we compete for a rare resource. It means we stand in line with everyone else. So what we want to do is create a destination of choice, because there's a vision. Do you want to hear the vision? Shut up, man. So here it is. We can stand in line with everyone else, and we do. We do stand that line. Or we can create our own line. How? Why? Because we're Ngati Porou. That's what we do. We create our own line. How do we do that? It's not easy, but I want to tell you, I ran into Professor Rathan Subramaniam. He is the Dean of the Otago Med School, the new Dean. And I had a 5-minute talk with him, and I just shared the vision with him. And he said, I want to talk to you fellas. I want to do something about that. I want to establish a teaching clinical position at Te Puia. He's got it. Is that what you want? Because that's the vision. That's the only way we create our own line. And that's what we're about, is creating our own line. So we want your support. We want your support because it means refreshing and revitalising Te Puia. And look, don't come and tell me about, we need to shut down Te Puia or that sort of thing. I'm not listening, right? I'm not listening. And if anybody has that idea, then I'm not with you. So we have a resource and a place which most iwi would die for. Yeah. I'm glad I'm getting a reaction. I need more stories. Yeah. There are countless iwi around this country who would love to have that resource. And they would value it, they would prize it, they would protect it, and they would grow it. And so we need your support on that. Because we can create our own line, but to create our own line means we need everybody else to build the infrastructure around it and to support us to the hills. All right? So, last slide. I end with people. You can read all that. I just want to say that I'm proud to serve with people, both staff and board members who are highly, highly committed. You know, when we took on this job 8 years ago, it wasn't pretty. It wasn't pretty. And we've come a long way. And that takes blood, sweat, tears, great commitment and effort. And I'm proud of everybody that has come along on that journey with us. And we've got a couple of new board members. There's Dr. Emily. Emily, you want to stand up? And Rhonda Tibble, you want to stand up? And she joins Husi and Matt Pavano and myself is to sit around the table and to try to govern a pathway forward. We talk about all things such as genetic research, whakapapa, those sorts of things. That's about, in some ways, resetting the past so that, about resetting the past so that we can reshape the future. That's what we're on about. All right? That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Tepa. I tēnei wā mihi ana ki tō tātou puari o te hauora. A kia koe me ngā tuahine me a tātou i roto i te karangatanga ka noho te māhine. Nā reira, Emily, koro ko Rhonda, nau mai, hala mai, si te tautoko i ngā mahi hauora kai Wainganui a tātou. We'll have questions later, Rarawa. We've got other things. We'll have questions later. We'll have questions later. We've got some other things to attend to. But thank you. I just want to say in this presentation, there's a lot of food for thought for all of us. A lot of food for thought for all of us. And a moku tonu whakaoho ohoho au I roto I etahi o ngā āhuatanga I roto I tā tātou ripuata. Hoi anō, ka tukuna tēnei wā ki tō tātou kaitia ki I ngā pūtea, ngā piuta a tō tātou runanga, to our interim CEO, Wayne Pānapa. Kia ora, Wayne.
Tēnā tātou, ngā whānau, ngā hapu o Ngati Porou. Ātinana nei, aupurangi nei, ai ki ngā nama, maronga I te waia, tata ki te rimata maono, ngā whānau e mātakitaki mai ana maronga I te purangi. Nō reira, tēnā tātou. Nōku te waimare kia whaka kōrero mai ki ngā tōpūtanga o ngā piuta, ngā hiringi, me ki, o te Runanganui o Ngati Porou, mo te tau 2020. Nō reira, anei te kōrero nei, e whatamai nei, ene o ngā nama, kei te kākāriki, te tai, ene o ngā nama, kei te whero. Engari, kei au te kōrero. So to talk to the left-hand side of the page, and I'm just scanning the room because my tino hoa, Tawa, she normally has a question that she will look to raise in regards to the numbers. So I'm going to just work through the financial performance. Some like to refer to this as profit and loss, the P&L, which for me is about the people and the love. So let's start with the love in terms of the revenue. So hei te kākāriki tērā nama, 40.08 million. And it's in green because compared to the previous year, we've seen that number kua piki. We then move to the surpluses from our commercial activities. So just looking at the commercial arm, and I kōrero kia te mātānuku te ngā pito kōrero e pāna ki te rā wahanga. So 6.52 million commercial profits, which if you've got your annual report in front of you, you'll find these numbers on page 46 to 53. Now, it's a profit, tuatahi. The reason why we have denoted that in red is because compared to last year, our number was, wasn't as good, but it was still a profit. Okay, and again, Mātānuku talks about the extreme volatility on our financial markets, the challenges through COVID. So we're still saying we put in a good innings, but not quite as good as the year before, because that number was approximately 9.75 million last year profit. Ka pai? We then come down to I te tōpūtanga o ngā mahi katoa, our group earnings before interest, expense and tax, or EBIT, as we kaitatou love to throw out there with acronyms. Tērā nama, 5.3 million. Again, a profit before interest and tax, but I roto I te tai whero because compared to last year, we weren't as good as our efforts last year. That number last year was 6.9 million, there or thereabouts. Okay? I te tōpūtanga o tērā o ngā mahi, mai te taho te rōpū katoa, te Runanganui, group net profit after tax, 3.82 million. And again in red, just to denote that compared to our performance last year, not quite as good. Ka pai? But anena, tērā atu tā, the financial position. From a group assets point of view, we have lifted again. We have grown the asset base again from the previous year. By a humble sum, but nevertheless, the asset base of Ngati Porou ko piki haere anō. Group equity, ko koutou ngā kaipanga o tērā wahanga o te balance sheet, ara te equity, the shareholders' interest as a value in the balance sheet of Te Runanganui o Ngati Porou. Again, ko piki haere anō, 232.58 million. Ka pai. But again, if we were just to compare that as a percentage, for those of us who like to convert numbers to a percentage, we've come down slightly. So our asset base is growing, but when we do that calculation to determine our group equity percentage against our total asset position, we've come down slightly. Last year we were 90.20% equity to total assets. This year we're 89.82%. Kapai? All right. All right, brother. Again, here's our financial representation of our performance over the last 5 years. So from 2016 coming through to 2020, we can see where we have landed in terms of our net profit, which is about the sixth line down, where we can see 3.821, and that's in millions. And if we look across to the right, we can see how we have travelled in terms of that performance since 2016 to 2020. We then come below there, and again, all we are looking to do here in terms of the financials is to show the whānau how we have performed in regards to our commercial activities, our tribal cultural activities, and then deducting our tax number, we get to the same number that is in the bolded line along the net profit. So, he wahanga no kia whāriki hea te mahi o te Runanganui o Ngati Porou. We move on to the statement of financial position, and again we can see our total assets, our total liabilities, our total equity for 2020, and looking across to back towards 2016. And for us, again, I refer back to our asset base is growing in line with our equity position. And we can see, yes, over that period, we have seen some movements in our total liabilities, but as a percentage of our total asset base, for example, if we take non-current liabilities, where for most balance sheets, that's where any debt sits. Ngati Porou, as a group, has a debt to asset ratio of approximately 4%. That is very low, whānau. Very, very low. Ai, tika. Engari, I tēnei wā, he paku noi ho te toa i ngā mani roto i ngā pēke mo ngā mahi. And kua kōrero kia mātānuku, we are looking at those strategies where in some instances it's better to use debt because it is so very cheap money to use, as opposed to using our cash and looking to other activities where we get a higher return. So, aye. I love getting to this slide, and I hoki au ki taku kōrero, I taku hui ātau tuatai, where I stood up at the hui ātau, my first hui ātau for te Runanganui o Ngati Porou, and said, cash is king, and cash is still king. So when we get to the numbers here, we are reporting that as a group, our net cash flow for the year, and this is on page 52 of the annual report, was 2.9 million, compared to last year where our net cash flow was negative 3.7 million. So we get to that number because of the collective efforts of what within the organisation we are required to deliver upon against those strategic aims and objectives of Te Runanganui o Ngati Porou. But in terms of cash, the rubber hits the road when you look at it from an operating activity point of view, where we had a positive operating net cash flow of 231,000 compared to last year where we were negative 141,000. We then look at our investment activities, and we can see that from our investment activities, we had again a positive cash flow there of 3.4 million compared to last year where we had a negative net cash flow from investment activities of 7.9 million. If we then look at our financing activities, our financing activities tell us that we were 630,000 negative in terms of financing activities compared to the previous year. But what that number tells us, what the detail of that number tells us, te iwi, is that we have paid down debt we have ensured that where we have liabilities that need to be met, we've paid those. So although that number, he whiro, and it's negative, it is showing that we are living within our means, we are still producing a positive operating cash flow, and we are servicing our debt requirements, which again, as I talked to in the previous slide, our exposure in terms of our debt to our total assets is only 4%. So i te whakamutunga, net profit is down from last year, but it's still a profit. Revenue has increased compared to the previous year, and we talk about the detail of that in our report. Our services activities have increased, but with that comes the added responsibility of the obligations that go with that revenue lift, which is why our expenses have risen. And that's mainly been in staffing costs. So as contracts in the service sector require more human resource, we recruit, we get those staff into those positions. They deliver on the objectives, but we still make sure that we are operating efficiently in those spaces to meet all our operating costs and have funding left over to assist with the back office functions, the management functions, the governance functions of the entity. So in summary, net cash flows were positive. As I said, total assets have increased and our total equity has increased. Nō reira, koira ngā whakarāpopoto, te tōputanga o ngā kōrero e pāniki ngā piuta o te Runanganui o Ngati Porou. One more slide there. Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora, Wayne. Ko whakakao ngā kōrero, ko takoto mai te whāriki e stāe ei tō tātou runanga te kawe i ngā mahi. Is there anybody prepared to move the motion that's on the Jane? Jane, you second, Lois. Are there any questions? Well, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? Ngā mea gai te abstain. Tēnā koutou, kia ora e kama. Can you read it out for those that are... Oh, the motion was that the presentation of the annual report and audited consolidated financial statement for the Ngati Porou Group for the 2019-2020 income year as presented be adopted by the 2020 AGM. That was moved by Jay Ngarimu and seconded by Lois McCarthy Robinson and carried unanimously by this meeting. Kia ora.
Just in closing, I'd just like to acknowledge the finance team in terms of the work in getting us to the point of our audited financial statements. And then along with that, I'd like to acknowledge Deloitte, our external auditors, who have been our auditors for the last 5 years. To Silvio and his team at Deloitte, just want to me to the team. Kia ora tātou.
Can I ask you to all stand, please? Turn around and say to the person behind you, you're still there.
They're not going anywhere.
You're still there.
Strategic updates, yeah. Come on. You.
Strategic update.
Click it back.
And everybody got their bottle of water? That's great. We'll move on to this part of our agenda, which is the strategic plan update.
tātou. As you know, koenei te tuapapa o tō tātou runanga, ko te reo o Ngati Porou me ona tikanga, te takapau orara. E rima ngā pau o te whare. Ko te whānau, ko te rangatira, ko te mātauranga, ko te whairawa, me te kaitiaki. I roto i te wāhanga e anga whakamua nei tātou, mo te wāhanga ki te whānau, we're caring for our tamariki mokopuna, tamaiti mokopuna, under the Te Ara Kāinga framework and the development of a Ngati Porou housing strategy. E anga whakamua nei tātou. I roto i te mātauranga, education grants and interim programs have been initiated, and they will be enhanced. And we are also developing a mātauranga high-level framework, learning for living, our way. And our way is Ngati Porou way. That is a kaupapa e anga mua nei tātou I roto I ngā kaupapa a te Runanganui. I roto I te ahotanga o te whairawa, well, I mihi tātou kia Shane, koia e tia haere nei I ngā ahotanga o Holkou, me te hunga kai Pākihi, kia whaioranga o tātou whānau, o tātou hapu, o tira Ngati Porou ahakua kei whēnoho ana. I raro I te karangatanga o te kaitiaki, ko te taiao, our work plan and resource operational, and ngā mahi whakarukea a tāwhiri mātea. Basically, koena te huarahi e whaia nei mo te wāhanga kia climate change. Mo heo tonu tātou te rā āhuatanga kei runga I ngā ngutu, ngā āhuatanga e anga whakamua nei mo te Runanganui, koenei ngā whāinga ke tae mātou te hoki mai kia koutou a te tau e tū mai nei I anga pēhea, e pēhea na te haere mo ene o ngā kaupapa. Koera, te mea whakamutunga I raro I te pau o te rangatira, hapu exercising mana over their takutai, moana and natural resources. The Raukumara joint governance agreement with Ngati Porou and Te Whānau Apanui and the kawanata that we've signed with our tuakana o Te Whānau Apanui, hei whakaora I te Raukumara. The Waiapu JMA review underway to present in December, resourcing and co-designing work in play with the GDC. He nui ngā āhuatanga kei runga ia tātou I roto I te mahi a te GDC. Rokohanga I rongo koutou. I whakai te GDC unanimously kia whakatū ngā Māori wards. Me taku kōrero kia tātou katai anō ka tīmata te mahi. Ko whakai rātou, hoi anō ko tā tātou mahi te kōkiri ia tātou tonu ki te pōti kia mana I tērā āhuatanga. And the Ngati Porou taumata, which we have every year, we were unable to hold that this year with the Crown due to COVID and the general elections, but we will be inviting the Prime Minister and her kāhui minita a te tau e tū mai nei. Mō ngā kaupapa te whakatinana mai. Ngā kaupapa a Ngati Porou, horapa. Wena ngā āhuatanga o tā tātou rautaki I anga whakamua nei. Te nama tuaono o ngā rārangi whakarite o tēnei hui, ko te whakatau I tā tātou external auditor for Te Runanganui o Ngati Porou a te tau e tū mai ne. And we got that paper there? I need to call that PricewaterhouseCoopers be appointed as external auditors for the Ngati Porou Group for the 2020-21 income year. Now, you'll notice that it's a change from our previous auditors. We went to the market, invited all these companies that are entitled or able to audit large organizations, and Pricewaterhouse were the preferred group to do our audit for next year. So I'm inviting somebody who might like to move that motion on behalf of Ngati Porou. Uncle Ratu, kia ora, thank you, and Cody. Any discussion? All those in favour, please say aye. Ngā mea whakakahore, kahore. Kia ora, tēnā koutou e kama. General business and questions. Kia ora. Rarawa, you had a question, so ko koe te mea pakeke, well, I'll let you.
Well, I did, but it's only a humble comment. I heard today, I really wanted to commend the health report, but I wanted to remind ourselves of the role Hubble played. So not forgetting Hubble.
Kia ora, e te pāpai. Ko porau koa, ko hamo te wahine koa. Tēnā koe. Kia ora. Any other questions or general business? Ka pai boi. Oh, here, what have I got?
Moi o pai koe ki ngā mea nei.
Kia ora tātou Ngati Porou whānui koe whakakutai mai nei tēnei rā. Mō koutou ka rino kai moi mai ki au ko nāra wairu tēnei no Ngati Putanga me te whānau a pōkai mi atu nei ki au koutou. Just a question about for the holdco, tēnā koe te uncle, mā tānuku, me koutou katoa o te puari. I just have a question in terms of our investment funds. There's a lot of investment funds in Tasman and all those types of equities. Has the holdco considered, do they have a plan in terms of ethical investments? Also looking at towards investments in ESGs or environment, social, governance funds. He kōrero no e pāna ki taua awatanga.
Tēnā koe Hunara. The answer is yes. So we have already been through one specific process looking at ethical investment, and it's an ongoing thing. With the big funds, you have money in places that you don't necessarily know about. So it is a matter of constantly reviewing about where it is. So, avoiding things like tobacco, munitions, someone that might be involved in like broadcasting, which has pornography or those sorts of things involved in it. So that's an ongoing process. And look, you can take that as far as you feel you need to looking at things like hydrocarbons, all of those sorts of issues. So yes, it is a matter of constant review, and we do change out of fund managers from time to time and look at fund managers who maybe fit better with our strategy or who are providing better returns, all of those sorts of things. So yes, it is part of the way the holdco approaches it, and it's an ongoing process too.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah.
Can somebody take a mic to please?
Sure.
Kia ora tātou, ko Wiwano te taku ingoa no Tangikaroro Native Reserve. I just want to raise a lovely sentence I've read here on one of your portfolios, which reads, Tangi Karora project, the tono for the Runanganui to support an application to the Provincial Growth Fund and TPK was noted and accepted. Was noted and accepted. That rings music to my ears. So I'm grateful now. It's been a 12-year journey, and I'm still sitting at the old whakaongangi school waiting for the big day. So hopefully this is a step in the direction I've been waiting for, and I'm looking forward to boots on the ground to move this project along. Nā reira, kia ora tātou katoa. Thank you.
Any other general business?
It's normally ringing.
Kia ora, my name is Aroha, and my main marae, Tina Toka and Mangahane. Okay, I have a motion which is carried forward from last year's AGM, and it was noted as communication. At that time, no, I'm not going to stand in front of Tepa. So last year, I didn't put a motion on an assurance that communication was going to be, in my opinion, dealt with. I feel compelled this year to actually put a formal motion about communication. Now, my motion, and then I need to talk to it very briefly, is to reinstate the monthly communications via the newsletters. The newsletters were fantastic. The newsletters actually spoke to us. I'm sorry, some of the language in this report, and I'm educated, was so hard to actually understand. So whatever it is, and I'm suggesting a newsletter, is that it suits the audience and the level of language. I'm not saying dumb it down, I'm just saying make it so that we can understand what's happening in our runanga. I read this report, I read the whole thing. And a lot of the stuff I found out yesterday, the day before. It would have been good if I had known this through the year. Then we wouldn't have to go into long conversations about things that happen, I don't know, whenever. So I'm going to restate my motion, is to reinstate the monthly communications via newsletter. The newsletter is to be emailed to registered members of Ngati Porou. Obviously, in my opinion, that's probably one of our best ways. I'm actually going to speak to that. I'm not a Facebook person. I don't look at Facebook. I don't like Facebook. And unfortunately, I don't actually listen to the radio station. Sorry about it. I prefer to listen to my own music, but I mean, that's something that I need to educate myself on. Yeah. I liked the, oh, hang on, just a note, please. The minutes didn't come out with the packs that I collected from Ruatoria. So today was the first time I'd seen the minutes, which is probably why I didn't realise there was stuff in there. Just a note. Right. Now, it's good in the minutes that I've seen today that the stuff discussed last year was linked back to the PO. I like that. What I didn't see in this report was the link back to the PO being done consistently. I liked some of the stuff that was in here, the going forward stuff. You know, that stuff that's telling us, oh, this is what's going to happen in the next year. You know, these are the goals. The positives, I hope you agree, is that as stakeholders, which is all of us, we know what's going on, we belong, and we actually own the whole process. We had Tepa here saying, let's work together. Yeah, we do, because we own the whole process, and the Runanganui trustees are there to act as our trustees. Having that ongoing communication, is a transparency matter, is an accountability matter. And I don't know, it must have been put in the hard pile, because 5 years ago at Porourangi, it was a goal. Communication was actually a goal. Now, that's 5 years ago at Porourangi. I have attended just about every AGM, and it hasn't come up again in that since then, since 5 years ago. Now, on page 29, yeah, like I said, the year ahead, on page 29 of this report thing, I thought that was good, because that was a good exemplar of what's to come ahead, and I see that others have done it too. Question. Well, I suppose we've had a lot of things. The Runanga has done so much this year. Heaps. I have a question though. How do we know about this stuff before we come here? You know? What else? Yeah, pretty much that. So, one more time.
Kia ora, aloha. I'll receive your motion, and if you've got a seconder. Does anybody want to second Aroha's motion about the communication? Who wants to second? Oh, second. Who? Oh, Tao. I don't know that there needs to be any discussion about it, but I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, carried. Kia ora. And everybody receives a lot of information from different forums. I think the newsletter will add to the communication. I do think that the Runanga needs to be better about comms. I also, there's a lot of things that have happened this year, and basically, you don't want to go out and blow out to everybody, we've done this, we've done that. You just like to sort of keep it under the radar and enjoy each other's humility in the things that have happened. I'll leave it at that. There is a website for those that don't like Facebook, and everything in here is on our website. It's on our website. Maybe the website needs to be redesigned, but yeah. But anyway, okay. Any other general business? Oh, Campbell.
Apparently, I've got a film that I didn't know about. What was that?
Soundbite.
Oh, okay. So while I've got your attention, so there's a number of things I'd just like to acknowledge the Runanganui o Ngati Porou and some of the take that I'm involved in. So starting with the takutai morning and our hui tomorrow, rohe one. So I'd like to acknowledge the Runanganui there. The Raukumara that Ray has already mentioned. We have a lot of work to be done there, but I'd still like to acknowledge all the work that's been done so far and the support we've gotten from the Runanganui there. Ngati Porou Iwi, I certainly would like to acknowledge Holdco and the support that we've gotten over the last 2 years in getting the extraction and the processing plant somewhere close to here. Don't want to steal anybody's thunder. I'd like to acknowledge that. That's what I came here for, that one, that big one. I'd also like to acknowledge the Spark Digital Connectivity and the fact that my marae is the poster boy marae on page 26, and yet we still don't have Spark Digital Connectivity, but we're down for it on December the 8th. The last one is East Coast, Ngati Porou East Coast Rugby Union. I certainly would like to acknowledge the support that we've got from the Runanganui o Ngati Porou there. Ngati Porou Hauora, Tepa, we could just do with our doctor in the Marakawa Health Clinic, please. And you talk about us being in the line, well, sometimes I feel as though we're in the queue, the far queue. So, roll the tape, please. It's pretty unusual for us not to get people. If you're wondering about the impact that where this goes, where your sponsorship goes, that every Saturday from March through to October, somewhere on Ngati Porou East Coast, from ages 4 to 44 plus, there's community rugby being run by your community, for your clubs, for your junior advisory board, for your referees. There we go, that's the mighty Matakawa winning everything. Right through to primary school, teenage rugby, seniors, the girls, growth sport, the girls, the women, more successful than the boys, just like to say. So we're very appreciative of what small amounts we receive from Te Runanganui o Ngati Porou, because it enables us to put all this together on your behalf. I've got to go now. According to Tepa, I have only a limited tenure left on this earth. And I don't want to waste it. I don't want to waste it here.
There was one more business.
All the best.
Any other general business? Kia ora.
Ko Stuart McClutchy aho. I refer to the restoration of the Raukumara and its initiatives, and would like to know if you propose to use 1080 poison as one of the strategies, and are you aware of the risks, the inherent risks and consequences for using this stuff? Kia ora.
Kia ora, Stuart. The plan that for the restoration of the Raukumara that came up from our whānau in Hapu, delivered to the Runanganui to be presented to the Minister, has provision for the use of 1080. Provision. And that's the plan that's come from our people, both within Ngati Porou and whānau Apanui. So there is that provision in the proposal. That proposal went to the Minister for her to use in her budget bid planning to Treasury, to the Cabinet. And the plan that's come out of the budget bid also has provision for the use of 1080. Te Runanganui o Ngati Porou has not adopted a position on the use of 1080 yet. The Runanganui o Ngati Porou is aware of the views, conflicting views, in many cases, on 1080. We have, as I said earlier, a group working on finalising a plan for the governance group of whānau Apanui o Ngati Porou to consider and, if satisfied, adopt. There's no conclusions yet made about recommending 1080 at this point, but there are no conclusions reached either at this point. The thrust of the proposal and the initiative that the Runanganui supports is that our people, Ngati Porou Whanapanui, get every opportunity they can that's possible within this plan of restoration to both handle the pest control, any restoration measures, and so it's also an employment and training opportunity. While it would be easy for some just to use 1080 to achieve that end, our approach is at least a balanced approach. It certainly takes into account our people. It certainly looks at the opportunities that can be provided for employment in both the culling, pest control, pest eradication initiatives. The plan looks to create 40 jobs, 23 full-time and 18 seasonal. That's 41, but near enough. So at this point still, I can't say categorically that the 1080 will be used or it won't be used. We're in a process and we are aware of the views surrounding 1080.
Thank you, Ray. Any other general business?
Oh. Kei te haere tēnei? Oh. Ai, tēnā tātai, he pānui pai tēnei, he pānui poto hoki. Noko nei ahau, ko Caroline Ngātai Melbourne tōku ingoa, no reira ko te whānau hini rupe te hapu. Neira te mihi ki te poari matua. Hari ko te ngākau ko tai mai tēnei hui ngā whakahirehira kia tātai, kia mātai te whānau hini rupe. Hoi anō, taku tū poto noi honei, te whakapāho, tētahi kaupapa tino miharo kei te tū a tērā rātapu. Te whakarewa e rua ngā pukapuka, ko tētahi ko hini rupe. Tētai atu ko tūmana kōturu e whakairi a ora tia. Nō te rōpū ngā marae kāinga o Matakawa i nei pukapuka. He aha te taki i tui mātou i nei pukapuka. Nō te mea he kaiako, tēnei rōpū ngā marae kāinga, he kaiako mātou katoa. Ko ki te mātou i ngā tauku hepatu nei, ngā pukapuka ka puta mai i te tāhuhu o te mātauranga. MOE, whānau, MOE. Ministry of Education. Ka tai mai ngā pukapuka, kāre he pukapuka e pānikia tātai, a Ngati Porou. Hoi anō ko puta te whakaaro wanganui a mātou ko Wayne Abraham, Pohatu Pautu, Juanita Holloway, Dana Wirapa, mātou toko rima. Ko puta te whakaaro mā mātou e tuhi ngā pukapuka, ka horahia i roto i te ao. Hoi anō, i koina te take o i nei pukapuka, i ahu mai i tētahi kaupapa ka noho i raro i te tāhuhu, ko te aro ngārahu tērā. Anko rātu, kei whekwe. Haramanga, anko. Waimaria mātai, nā anko rātu te reo i whakatika. Hoi anō, hei whakaora te reo o Ngati Porou me ona tikanga. A tērā rātapu whānau, te kaimatahi karaka te pōhiri, whakarewa ngā pukapuka e rua me te kai, kara mai mo te kai, hoki. Kia ora, kei konei. Ka hoa tu, ka pai, kia ora. Ka pai, ka hoa tu te wā kia anko rātu tēnei.
Poto nohe te wā, kia koutou e ngari, me mihi au kia koutou katoa. Te mea hoki, ko e nei kōrero he kōrero mō koutou. Ki te kore koutou e rongo, kore koutou e mōhio ki a koutou. Ko au, ko hine rupu e kōrero nei, ko au ko tūwhakairi ora e kōrero nei. O ku whakapapa noko nei, tūturu noko nei, tipu wake au i te araroa nei. Haere au ki te kura i te araroa nei. Rua no tātou o te araroa, kai te toi. Taku hoki mai ki te kāin kārau te mōhio ki te nui ngō koutou, o te araroa nei. Engari, e tipu rā e rea. Te wā e kitea i tōna nei au. Kei te nui ngā mihi kia tātou katoa mō ngā mahi, kua mahi a tātou. Ko au he etita au, kai rangahau. Tīmata mai i reira, mutu tonu i reira. Ko ina aku mahi tēnei au. Hei reira, kei te mihi atu kia koutou, me waiho ngā kōrero
mo te rātapu.
Ko ina. Hei reira, kia ora koutou katoa.
Aronga mai, ingari mā te huri ka riri te manu, rua te kaitara mo ia pukapuka. Ka whakahoki tērā pūtia ki tō mātai kaipapa no te whakaora atu i te ro Ngati Porou. Hui kai, hui whenua, hui tangata ki te paohi me rupe au e. Kia ora. I don't think I need this.
You don't need that?
No. Harikimu, Auntie. Harikimu.
You can stand up over there and find your corner.
Ane?
Just to sing Karong Hui.
Yeah.
Hold the mic up to your mouth.
Kia ora. Tēnā tātou te whānau o Ngati Porou. He mihi tuatahi ki a koutou ngā kai whakahaere o tēnei hui tino rangatira. Ko karo e tino mohe o koutou ingoa. Engari kei te whakamihi au ki a koutou mō ngā mahi tino rawe e roto tēnei rohe. He tūnoho tēnei taku ingoa ko hine awe. Ka pōre o ngā report o tēnei hui. Hika ka kite o te whare e homai ngā koutou ki a hau. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you. I have been so blessed with this wonderful, wonderful gift. After 19 years of a pakanga, really, because many of us have to go through trials and all sorts of things at my age. I'm entering into my iwa tekau decade. And I am just so blessed. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And, aha koa, he whare tino a tāhua. But there are many things that I just want to say that I've been coming to these meetings for quite a few years. And the predominant thing that I've heard in these meetings are the 3 Fs. It's not the swear word. Truly it isn't. And these 3 words have stuck with me over the years because I have been in the teaching force for many years, but I found that, and in the language that was presented to us as common people, often I went home with my brains fried because I did not understand a lot of things that are happening in your department. And so my plea is that sometimes we just need to talk real simple. That we come back to the common language of the people. I love what you do and the wonderful presentation of all your reports. But for many of us who are in this decade, technology is something like out of this world. And I just learned how to use the fax machine, and my mokopuna said, "What's that?" So I'm saying, that these 3 F words were things that have been predominant in a lot of us that live in this little cul-de-sac that I love so much, which is Whakaingangi Valley. And these 3 words were fisheries, whenua, and farming. But there was nothing about whānau. But I want to tell you a whakatauki that our parents and my tipunas taught us. And it's this: if the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? That's my challenge. We have to look at the foundations of who we are. And the foundations for me during the lockout was what was important of getting our whānaus together. And I want to say again, Ngati Porou Runanga, thank you for the wonderful provision that you provided us with and the wonderful care that we were entitled to. For the people who worked in this rohe, Ani and your wonderful crew, thank you. From the bottom of our hearts, I want to speak about that those are the things that are important to us, that are whānau. And now you're starting to talk about houses, which is wonderful, and health, and keeping us
alive and keeping on going. And so that we don't get our brains fried, but that we would keep a sound mind and we will still be active in this village. Nō reira, I just want to stand up and tautoko you people. And I say all the best for what you are planning for this year. Selwyn and your crew, thank you. Nō reira te whānau, that's all I want to say. I'm a very appreciative queer, and I'm now looking for a plumber.
That's two of us, Auntie. Holly.
Sorry, Gil.
Tēnā tātou te whānau o Ngati Porou, ko ai au, ko Holly Pōhati tōku ingoa, he uri tēnei no te aitanga amate. Kei konei au, hei whakakanohi i a tātou taurahere, rā Ngati Porou ki Pōneke, ko au te kaitiaki pūtea, mo taua taurahere. And just like Nanny over there, I want to mihi to our Trump Nui, mo te koha. We've got 24,000 Ngātis registered in Pōneke. Heaps. We should get more at our hui, but we don't. But we're getting there. So I wanna mihi to our Runanganui for the koha hei hāpai i a mātou ngā hāpori o Pōneke. So that pūtea was donated to Kōkiri Mirai, who were quite instrumental in the kaipeks. They distributed over 250,000 kaipeks throughout the Lower Hutt and Wellington, Porirua region throughout the lockdown period. So kia ora koutou. We've got a new committee that have been elected recently within our taurahere, and we have monthly hui. Our biggest pull is to try and build our membership. And it's really obvious that there's a generations missing, 20s to 40s. So I'm just planting the seed here with our whānau so you can trickle that down to your own whānau in Pōneke, kia hara mai. We've got some pretty exciting stuff going on that we're planning for within our taurahere that are going to really pump our people up and hopefully make a connection for a lot of them that don't have that hononga ki te haukainga. Some of them know their Ngati Porou, but don't know which hapu, don't know which marae. So we want to try and bridge that gap for them to bring them home. And, you know, staunchly proud to be Ngātis, but just don't know how the connection is. So part of our mahi that we're trying to do within our taurahere is to build that for them. And we'd like to invite anyone that's in the Wellington region on the 6th of December to our Ngati Porou ki Pōneke taurahere Christmas party being held out at Days Bay in Eastbourne. Big whānau, barbecue, sea, all of that sort of stuff happening. And we're crossing our fingers, toes and eyes and tongues for a good day. Tēnā tātou.
Thanks, Holly. You just reminded me of something. I did say, Te Runanganui, just before COVID, we had agreed to go out and meet with all our taurahere. We managed to have the one with Waikato, but we had to postpone all the other taurahere visits. But I'm just saying here, in the early new year, we will reinstitute those hui from Te Runanganui o Ngati Porou with our taurahere across the country, and probably take a lot of this talk, which is hot off the press, to add value and to rekindle our ties. Whakapūmau ngā kāwai tangata. So, is there any other general business?
Koe anō rā e heka mā, tēnā koutou katoa, ko hui mai nei raro i tāu o tēnei whare. E uri tēnei no e teino ngā hapu, o te takiwā o Hukurangi, ana kei te tū atu awau ki te tuku mihi mai i ērā kārangatanga maha oku
o te pā o whareponga, o tira tō tātou nei puari tu pārai tingo ko te Hukurangi Takiwā Trust. Kei te mihi atu mātou hāngai kia koutou katoa i ka mā, e rārangi mai nei ki mui i a mātou i o mātou aroaro. E whakapau kahana ki te hāpai i ngā momo petonga katoa o ngā mahi o Ngati Porou. Katahi ka rua mātāruku, koutou kei te heke, kei ki tino mihi atu mātou kia koutou hoki. Tō koutou kaha ki te aki, ki te hāpai, ki te ope, i ngā mahi, i ngā tau e heke nei, ko pahuri ake nei. Rokohanga, ko hoki atu ngā mahara, kia rātou mā, i taka hia te huarahi, ana kia tai pai atu tātou katoa ki tēnei wā. Katahi, ka rua, ka toru, nā koutou i homa e tahi herini kia mātou, kia whakahaere hia e tahi wānanga reo, i ngā tau ko pahuri ake nei. I nei ko tau ngā here ki aua herini, ki taua pūtia, ki tōku mōhio ko tutuki pai e rā kaupapa. Hoi anō rā heko mā, he wero anō kei mui te aroaro mō tātou katoa, ki te anga anō ki aua kaupapa e hāngai puana ki tā tātou nei reo me ona tikanga take ake o Ngati Porou. Kia kaha koutou, o tira kia kaha tātou, ki te hoi i tērā waka. Te waka a reo me ona tikanga ake o tēnei takiwā. Kāre ko atu, kāre ko mai. Nā reira, kia tau te io o te mauri ki rungi a koutou, o tira ki rungi a tātou katoa. Tēnā
Well, e hiko mā, tēnā tātou. Ka muri kia koutou, ko tae mai ki tēnei o ngā hui a tau. Hei kone Auntie Rose?
Yeah.
Aye. Can we go?
Oh, Auntie, will you close our hui, please? Just want to give you a mic.
No reira, te umi tēnei tātou, tēnei te mihi atu kia tātou tēnei rā. Mō tēnei hui, ka mau ki te wehi, kei o te hare o ngā mahi. No reira ko mutu tēnei hui, tēnei wā, kia ino i tātou. E te atu ka harawa tēnei te tuku whakamoe miti ki a koe, mo a manakitanga i a mātou rutu tēnei hui. Mō tewi nā rātou i whakatakoto ngā take, ko horapa i waho e ki mua i a mātou ki te iwi. Nō reira e tēnei wā, ka tuku mihi mō te hui. He mea tīmata, he mea mahi, he mea whakotiro te a koe. Kia whiwhitonua i mātou i te oratunu, i te mea te whai tēnei e koe, koe hukrai te tō mātou ariki. Āmene. Amen.